Hello and welcome to episode 432 of the Awesome Comics Podcast, a place with a small press makes one hell of a big noise. My name is Vince Hunt, and joining me as always is the creator of the comic series Vanguard, Dan Butcher.
Hello.
And he loves Judi Dench so much. It's Tony Esmond.
Listen, the worst thing that was said about Judi Dench wasn't me a minute ago, and you know it.
That is slander. We would never say anything about a national treasure.
It's fair.
Judy's one of our biggest fans.
It's fair. That's Dan's admission.
Judy's one of our biggest fans. She's an active member of the Slack community. And thanks for listening every week, Judy. You're a legend. And welcome to the show, everyone.
And she's in that movie, Cats.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Famously. I've never seen the film and I never will.
Me neither.
But funnily enough, we are talking about horror a lot this month because it is the haunting month of October as we record. So leading up to the Halloween horror special, we've got a few horror last week we were talking about giant cyborg dinosaur monsters, etc.
He was a good geezer, Gio.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
Yeah.
There's horror writing we're talking about. There may be a guest coming up that is a bit of a horror name as well. In the lead up. We may be talking
sometime this month, probably at night.
That's when all the best horror happens, at night. That's a good point, actually.
Best living Croydon. That's a bit topical, so apologies.
Well, you wake up and look left in my house.
My God. But yes, we are talking about lots of different spooky and Halloween-like subjects. And we're going to focus a little bit on sort of horror-based comic book covers. Just talk about that art, and it really is an art to do that sort of style of comic book cover. So we're going to have a little bit of a discussion on that. We've all picked one out, and sure enough, play along with us at home. Let us know after the show in the Slack community or online or wherever your favourite examples of sort of horror comic book covers, etc.
I think we'll do we'll put the pictures on the tweet or wherever we put it on social so you can kind of take a look. Because obviously understanding this is an audio medium we're talking about.
Yeah, we'll do our best to describe them.
Yeah. And we do a good job. That's what we do.
So full of confidence.
Yeah. I'll tell you who never lies to you, though. That's our lovely sponsors, Comic House, the indie comic marketplace that loves indie comics as much as we do, as much as you do. Because you're listening to this show. And it can't be for the other banter we do on this show because it's just absolute nonsense. But Comic House, however,
get off on it.
Is full of awesome. If you go on the comichouse.com, there's a huge selection of titles on their database. Lots of people have listed their books on there, and if you're a creator, you can do that as well. It's another avenue to start selling your books and work out to the world. But they also have an app, a digital subscription service like Netflix for comics, only £3 a month, and you get access to an enormous and growing library of digital indie comics. What's on there at the moment, Dan?
We've got Sicko, Volume 1. We've got John Lee Nonley, Volume 1, Issue 4. Let's Tell Some Stupid Stories. And Bloop and the Pigeon Pandemic, Colour Preview, Issue 0. That's like a kind of 22-page sampler of an upcoming... Well, not an upcoming. It's a current Kickstarter.
I'll back that.
Yeah. So more on that later in the show.
Yeah, that's by Alex Hahn, isn't it?
That's the one.
Yeah, great creator. And friend of the show. And there's loads of stuff like that, all that and more. So there's a 14-day free trial as well. Who doesn't love a free trial? To find out more, go to comichouse.com, and thank you to the Comic House guys as always for sponsoring this show.
Did you want to talk a little bit about your weekend adventures?
Yeah.
Yes,
Vince has been on his travels.
Yes, I was at Bristol. I popped into the Bristol Comic Expo this weekend. There was a Doubletree Hilton. Anyone who's listened to some of our recent shows has heard me sort of mention it in the shout-outs. It was a lovely sort of... I wasn't there very long, really. I met this chucklehead, Tom Curry, the leader of the Drink and Draw, of which there is one coming, and we'll let you know
this Friday,
about that.
13th.
Yeah,
later.
Get on it.
Well, okay. Well, there's all the details then. Friday the 13th, there's a Drink and Draw.
But it's going to go badly.
I met up with Tom, who had already bought a copy of Hocus Pocus, which is a great-looking hardcover, that book. And there was just a lot of familiar sort of local faces to me in there. And like Dan Harris, Sarah Millman.
Excellent.
There was Dave Broughton was there. There was the guys from like the 77 and the Sentinel. There was Steve Tanner and Time Bomb Comics. You always you know where Steve is as soon as you walk into a convention. No one can miss
Doing magic
that.
in the corner in his jacket, isn't he?
He's doing magic and selling his brand of comics. And there was loads of other. There was a brilliant exhibition of old sort of vintage comic book art.
You sent through some of the pics, and
Yeah,
You sent some Ron Embleton through, didn't you?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes, I did, which I didn't realise at the time. And this is why if you go to a show like this, if ever they have any kind of exhibition or something like that, go to it. It doesn't. I mean, I walked in there. I didn't know these comics. I didn't read these comics. I didn't know the creators. You know, I really didn't. It was only afterwards by looking up some names, and you know, there was stuff that Tony and I had seen at Lawless. You know, that there was the Jerry Anderson sort of cutaway
TV21 stuff. Yeah.
There was a bit of that, but there was also some fresh pages I hadn't seen before, and a lot of them were like TV adaptions. It was like The Persuaders and Wurzel Gummidge, things like that. And was it Fireball
XL5?
XL5.
Yeah. There's a page of that. And even if you don't know these shows, and certainly a lot of these shows were way before a lot of people's time, and they don't even know what these books are, just look at the art. Because seriously, just staring at those pages, and it was the wonderful, you know, it looks like collage. You can see where they've cut and pasted the boxes for the lettering and stuff over.
They used to do, isn't it? Pre-computers, it would be literally on the board, wouldn't it? Yeah.
That kind of craftsmanship, there's a kind of timeless quality to it, because you can the kind of quality and level of workmanship and skill invested in those pages are like, you can look at them whenever, and it's like, damn.
They look fully painted, don't they?
Yeah.
The colour's gone straight on them.
And and it was very much like that as well. You're just staring at the pages, and you know, me and Tom were there wandering around, and we almost went into sort of academic mode. You know, we were just like two blokes walking in, and then all of a sudden, wow, can you see the way that they've separated those panels and the design of the page? You know, because you just can't help but study these pages. Like I say, I don't know the context of the work, and sure enough, there are sometimes when you see the exhibition, some of the artwork, or it's of its time, should we say?
What do you mean, like old sensibilities?
Yeah, old sensibilities, especially if it's some old wartime comics, you know, that kind of stuff.
Just a little side note: this is going to come back round later on in another segment we've got coming up.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Don't you think?
I do, yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. But just looking at, like we said last week, you know, you open up some of the pages of Eerie and you see these artists that are doing ink washes, or they're doing, you know, just amazingly detailed stuff. Not for the big two, you know, not for the bigger companies as such. They're doing it for these sort of pulpy magazines. And you would think in this day and age, a multimedia tie-in is, I mean, I could be wrong, and I know there's a lot of people that work hard on these things, but sometimes they feel like they're an afterthought by publishers or companies. But looking at these pages, so much work and effort has gone into just the storytelling, the layout. I was staring at a page of the Persuaders, like full colour art. I mean, you do have the moments that they're trying to get the physical likenesses right, aren't they? You know, they're trying to get that. All right, okay, this looks like Roger Moore. He does on that panel. Loses it a bit there. But the colour on show and the dynamic nature of it. There was like a 6-panel page. I think it's one of the ones I posted. And these days, maybe a lot of people would structure it in a fairly formulaic box, long horizontal box. But this one, there was diagonals. The boxes were explosions. You know, things breaking out of boxes. You know, comic panels that didn't have frames. So much experimentation and just innovative stuff was done that I was looking at as just inspiration. It was strange. I saw this work from the 70s or the 60s. And when was the Persuaders around? It was about 70, late
70s,
yeah.
I think. Early 70s, maybe.
But I looked at some of these pages and thought, wow, there's not many people doing things like this in comics now. Do you know what I mean? It almost felt revolutionary for something that was like old. There is that kind of And this was a TV tie-in that probably there's probably in a long box. They're probably just tucked away or something like that.
Well, little tip: if you want to see some of that TV comic stuff, I saw today that Strange Apparitions have got a load of their pristine looking as well. A load of the old annuals of theirs.
Wow, nice.
In this week, so have a look at their website.
Yeah, there's some fantastic stuff going on, and obviously there are just some absolute names on there. I mean, I posted on my Instagram just some of the pictures I took. Like there's a Wurzel Gummidge page, and for those who don't know Wurzel Gummidge, Google it. It's hilarious. But the original one, obviously,
the John Pertwee one, obviously,
the mighty Pertwee, and just the facial, it's spot on. It looks effortless.
Did I tell you that I found out I was related to him recently?
No.
I'll bore you with that later. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh wow.
I read his autobiography. Yeah.
I didn't know you were a Gummidge. Anyway.
Yeah. My head comes off. I'm angry, Tony, today.
I wonder why that was. Turns out I know why.
Hey, I'm always pulling my head off.
But yeah, that was that was a highlight, and there was loads of great small press creators. So if you go to these events, and I hope all the creators did well. I think for a lot of them, I was talking to Sarah Millman, and she was saying this is kind of a good practice because a lot of them are going to be at Thought Bubble or like a bigger show like that. So to do a smaller show like this when you haven't done a show for a while, to do a smaller one before the big show is almost a little bit of a practice, a little bit of
gets the cobwebs out.
Yeah, totally. It is like that, which is a good thing to think about sometimes. If you're going to do a big show, maybe if you've got a smaller local show to you just to try, so
do a run up.
Because like the bigger shows do have a certain amount of pressure to them, don't they? And I don't mean like sales. I mean like table setup. All of these little things that we sort out. But no,
you can sort of unburden yourself of that kind of niggle or stress beforehand.
Make sure the card machine works. Make sure you got enough change.
Yeah.
Make sure you've got a tablecloth. Then you're right. You've got your setup ready to go somewhere else.
Exactly. So it's the practice run, but one that involves maybe you selling a few books at the same time. Good. So yeah, it was a fun afternoon. My big thanks again to Tom for the hang. That's me being cool. The hang.
What? Is that what the cool kids are saying nowadays?
I think no one has said that probably since the mid-'80s. I don't know.
Now you're hanging.
Yeah. But yeah, I find when I go to these shows, just the little art exhibitions, and there was certainly there was signing tables and stuff like that. But just that's kind of what gets me buzzed at the moment. Maybe that's because kind of in my comics read and stuff, I'm jonesing for some vintage comics. Whether it be the old UK stuff or some of this older stuff that I'm reading at the moment. That's not to say there aren't brilliant comics, modern comics coming out. I've just got this flavour for discovering older stuff.
We was musing about the Captain Scarlet end credits, the art pieces there.
Yeah, you said that you thought it was better than the actual, and I did as well. I used to watch those end credits and think, fucking hell, I wish that was just like that.
Yeah.
That is exactly what I'm talking about. And I was a fan of Captain Scarlet. I got to say,
it was pretty straight, if I remember it.
I'm
Captain
a Stingray
Scarlet
man. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm a Stingray man.
That must have been repeats because Stingray's like late 60s, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you fancy ladies who swim underwater and don't say anything? If I told you this story about my family, used to wind me up about that. So,
Aquamarina?
Yeah.
Marina.
Aquamarina. I always like the intro, Captain Scarlet, when there's the alley and the cat kind of goes and they put a spotlight on him and just blast him up.
It's like, but you just hear
yeah.
Yeah. Why not just have all of it of that, like this whole show of just
It's people with wobbly heads.
Yeah.
But at the end of that show, Captain Scarlet, Google that if you don't know as well. But obviously Spectrum was there, so there was a lot of Jerry Anderson type stuff at the con. But there was I've forgotten the names just escaped me, Tony. You just said it. The artist,
Ron Embleton.
Yeah. There was a piece of art in that exhibition, and it was just for a war comic. And I was stood looking at it for a good 5 minutes, and it's just like these soldiers trying to deal with an elephant. It's the sort of thing that could quite easily be a cover of a
classic war story.
Yeah, it could.
Who hasn't had an elderly relative tell you a war story about them tackling a giant
elephant? Yeah. But it could have quite easily been a cover of the week kind of thing.
Okay.
And it was just the first page of a story. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
there was a couple of panels underneath it. But I was staring at that for ages. Then, of course, once I said that, Tony immediately recognised the name. once I dug it out, and I was like,
Well, there's a great set of magazines called The Illustrator or Illustrators, I think they're called, and I think the Don's involved with them. He works with them, and
nice.
he's featured in their magazines. They're a little bit pricey, but they're sort of perfect bound, loads of artwork in there, and you'll find his stuff in that. There's some lovely examples of those magazines. Yeah.
I think certainly when I did the following Google search, I did find that, that was a name that popped up, that magazine.
Right.
As well as, like, as soon as I saw Captain Scarlet, and I just looked that he did all the end title cards, and I was like, he did some of the best artwork that I loved when I was a kid, and I didn't know.
There's loads of stuff like that. I don't know why, but I was obsessed with the images you used to see in the end credits because I used to think they were things that would come up elsewhere in the series.
Yeah.
And it was a bit like, do you remember the end credits of the original Star Trek? And you think, fucking hell, I didn't see that episode.
Yeah.
That creature looks like he's made out of molten lava. Why not see that episode? It's like that, you know.
Yeah. So, respect to those brilliant artists who have done all of that work that sometimes I think just gets glossed over, doesn't it? People don't realise it.
Yeah.
Standing on the shoulders of giants.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of museums, we've got another subject, haven't we?
That ties onto this. Take it away.
Well, we were sent. I'm not on Facebook. We were sent something into the pod by Stephen Marchant, who I think is one of the sort of runners of the Cartoon Museum in London, and he posted the following: "Well, this has pissed me off. We were all set to have a Batman exhibition next year. We had artwork lined up and everything, but we needed the okay from DC so that we could use their branding and images to promote it. 2 young brand and marketing executives came to the museum last week for a look around and have said no." And then in speech marks, "We felt there were too many political and potential sensitive reference artworks in the space that were a cause for concern. Aardman have no problem with us or Rebellion or DC Thompson or any of the estates of the major figures we've displayed, but there we go." Now we have emailed DC Comics, we messaged DC Comics without a reply just to say if they had anything to say about that. But I think that shows to me a lack of knowledge about the history of British cartooning, which when you go back to Punch and even like Private Eye and stuff, of course it's political cartooning. We're known for it in this country. Even Spitting Image or something like that. You got Ronald Searle and Martin Rosen and Bell and all the greats who are and they've even I know they've got pages for V Vendetta up and stuff like that as well. I don't understand.
But mate, there's like old media. There's going to be questionable issues and morality and topics displayed within it. It's
a museum,
to try and kind of whitewash that and sort of say, "Oh no, we're not going to show that because that doesn't correlate to."
It's an interesting wider point in relation to museums themselves, because what do they begin objecting to then?
Yeah, I mean, it's
what about weapons of war?
Yeah,
presumably they'd be straight up the table.
Yeah, exactly.
We know that there's stuff in the past that's questionable and beyond. I'm not good with words, so I'm not going to oversimplify things. But like you say, a museum, it's a talking point, and certainly it's.
Well, you go and learn about stuff.
You go, and you're learning, and even through seeing this artwork or whatever, it's fascinating. But part of that is also seeing the journey of see how far it's come. Do you know what I mean? If it was questionable at that point, see what they did to correct it. See what happened. What was the journey? What was the learnings?
I mean, we're going to take all the Nazis out of museums because they don't like what they did.
Yeah,
we need to learn about them so we don't make those mistakes again. It's
can't
madness.
say, that if I don't see it, then it didn't happen and everything's all right. No, we need to see it because it did happen, and that's how we learn.
Yeah.
And if you're doing these museums, and if you do exhibitions and museums, and you do have these sort of things, then certainly put messaging up, put signage up, sort of saying, as you would with any content, just to let you know, there may be, just a little warning. There may be some stuff here that might be shocking or
might be a bit challenging.
Yeah, it might be a bit challenging. You think about it in the layout, which I'm sure these guys did anyway. With the layout.
Yeah, it's curated. I can't imagine there's going to be anything in there that any of us or most of us.
But you've got the company that is basically Warner Brothers. Saying, "Oh, we don't like this history stuff in your museum."
Man, I can totally see that. A couple of suits come around and say, "Oh, I'm not sure about this," and knock it on the head. I mean, that's conjecture. I don't know. but just going on what I've read and what's been sent in, that's what it reads to me.
It's a shame because I'd have liked to see a lot of Batman. You know, I'm sure they do get some really great artwork in, and I would have liked to have gone to that.
Yeah,
which is a shame.
I would like to know sort of like what they found.
Yeah,
problematic.
Yeah, which is why we've written to them. To be fair, because I think it's only fair that we hear both sides.
I agree. Yeah.
And maybe if they do reply, we'll let you know. But yeah,
I'm sure there's some stuff in Batman's past for the character that's a bit sort of dubious, but then any of those characters with that length of
been going
body work, there's
going
to be stuff that's going to be dodgy.
The history of pretty much every long-standing comic book character is usually quite problematic. Just at some point.
I mean, if it ran over the wars, you're going to get racial slurs in there.
Yeah,
I'm sure there probably are.
Yeah. Well, like I said, with the war book, it was at the Bristol. There's some of the artwork there, which I imagine was like fucking hell. Like, that's like that's not acceptable now. But that's what the language was used at the time. So what are you going to do?
Yeah,
we can't take this stuff out.
No,
we can't do it because otherwise we'll never learn anything.
Yeah.
You can't edit history. You can just learn from it. Do you know what I mean? It's like those people that say, "Well, take these things out of the schools because I don't want my kids learn them." Don't be fucking idiots. They've got to learn these.
Yeah.
You know.
It was like when they took Mouse out. That was mad.
Yeah. Whole point as a parent is you're supposed to equip your child for like the trials and tribulations that can come ahead of them. Like, make sure they can handle the journey ahead. It's not to go forward and then try and make that journey as painless as possible by removing obstacles, because you can't do that. It's just, it won't work. Oh well.
We've gotten all grown up, haven't we? And thought provoking.
Yeah, well, when it comes to topics like this, I guess you have to be a little more sensitive.
Yeah, you have to be. You got to treat it sensibly.
Some of the mad conversations I've heard recently, mate. Yeah. And you're like, honestly, come on.
Yeah. But and that's just on the show. But back to the show.
I had a quick one, like a thought. We was watching a supernatural horror film yesterday. I guess this can go for comics as well. But like in some of these stories, like a lot of horror films, they have like demonic entities or the devil or someone getting involved. And so in this universe, in the story, there's the devil and there's God, and both of them are kind of actual entities, and people believe in them. They see their power being kind of like shown and affecting things. So kind of like in a Christmas film, like if something happens to Father Christmas and the presents turn up, everyone must know that Father Christmas actually is a real entity. It's not just make him up, because years and years and years, presents been delivered. So in these horror films, when there's a demon running around effing stuff up, don't they ever think, well, why is God not doing something about this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It either doesn't give a shit or we can't do anything about it. Like, but there's some monster running around slaughtering people, and what's God doing? But it's kind of weird because it treats them like, believing in God's like a matter of faith in these films. But there's literally a demon running around. Where's the faith? There's like,
I quite like those sort of Battles of Angels movies. You know, we had a little spate of them, didn't we? Legion, and there was that TV series as well. I quite like that stuff. You know, where you do get that sort of.
Oh yeah, the classic, the prophecy.
I like
the Christopher Walken. The first one's brilliant.
First one's okay. Yeah. Goes a bit south by the time you get to 3 or 4, but yeah. But yeah, I like all that. I kind of like that sort, because I'm not a Christian. I'm not religious in any way, but I kind of like, because I know the mythology. I kind of know all the players, which I quite like, you know.
Yeah.
I really like the original Omen. That fucking really scared me when I saw it as a kid.
I think I like the first 3, man. They're great.
Yeah.
Really like them. Yeah.
The whole accident thing, like when the music starts up, you're like, oh, fuck.
The remake was all right. I quite liked the remake.
Yeah, that's okay. It's not,
4 wasn't very good. I tried watching that a couple of times. Not very good.
What one's 4?
It's got that lady from V, the blonde lady who led the rebellion in V. She's the sort of character in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a bit made for DVD.
Okay, fair enough.
Made for DVD, those classic days.
Yeah.
We had
good old
Rage
days.
Carry 2. No, that's not. But sometimes when you look at a DVD or a Blu-ray or a video or a VHS, what's the thing that makes you pick it up from the shelf? Some awesome
cover
art and boobs.
It used to be the cover art all the time when we was doing
that's all. Yeah, that's all.
Video rentals.
It was lied to.
Horror films live and die on video rentals, buy that cover. There's a
Let's face it, that's digital comics now on Comixology, because you don't really get to see the interiors anymore, do you?
Exactly. And it just stands to reason that comic covers are just the same. As we've said, when you walk into a comic book shop, it is a wall of sometimes a lot of the similar things. What do you have that stands out? Well, amongst all the superheroes and everything else, a horror comic has to do something different. So, we've had a few comic book cover conversations on this show. We always like doing them because
we talked last week, didn't we, Gio, about his cover, didn't we? Because he was showing the monster but revealing it later in the comic, and there's that balance, isn't it, with needing to sell a comic.
And it's always a nice excuse to just look at some lovely artwork. So I'm just gonna start off, chaps, just in general, for a horror comic book, in issue 1, and maybe just because I'm on an issue 1 tangent, but first issue of a horror comic, what for you would work for you? What makes it stand out?
I don't think there's any one thing with horror, because horror is one of those weird genres that covers so many others, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So there's been horror stories in the X-Men, Batman. I mean, you could argue that Batman is a horror comic in many ways, certainly in sort of little periods of its history. And there's all different kinds of horror, isn't there? There's machetes, and then there's psychological, and then there's ghosts and psychics and all different things. So I don't know. I think it has to be the fundamentals of a good cover first for me. Yeah. And then it has to be just purely interesting. Yeah. I think,
I find that certainly based around your concept, whatever your book is, and it's a question of taste thing. I mean, we love those Tales from the Crypt. The classic sort of horror ones that have the branding almost in a bar at the top, don't they? How many indie comics have we seen that have basically just done
DC
that?
rips? Yeah,
I'll be talking about another one later.
Yeah. So there's obviously the strong branding, but I think it's more difficult when you've got like just an individual story. When you're telling a tale. Dan, what works for you for a horror cover?
I really like storytelling.
Yeah,
in a cover, when you see an image and you're like, oh my god, what's happening there? Or there's a moment of peril, but reading into it, that how's this going to play out? I think I sent an image for you for like a horror Christmas comic, V.
Yeah,
it was like the kind of monstrous figure, like in the Father Christmas, isolated in the snow, and it's like
it's a new James Tynion book, isn't it? That I'm looking forward to read actually.
And I was like, where's this going? That image just invokes a story, a plot. I want to find out what's going on there, and
also it's cool.
Yeah, the
title's quite big as well on it, isn't it? What's it called? Hang on, I'll look it up. Carry on talking while I look it up.
The stuff when it's just like a relatively generic pin-up, I'm just kind of okay, it's fine.
That's sort of just getting an image out of the back of a drawer somewhere that you get with a lot of like Spider-Man, Batman's, and Superman stuff. It doesn't. It's got to make me interested in reading it. That's what it's got to be.
Yeah,
it's got to pique your interest somehow, and the storytelling on the cover is a big part of that. I think
Yeah. You think of all the comics they go back and homage. It's always the ones that have got great storytelling aspects. You're not going to see some generic Batman jumping in the sky variant. Do you know what I mean? They have done that Jim Lee one with Batman and Superman standing up a couple of times, but
I mean, the storytelling is an interesting thing that you say, Dan. Like, because the Deviant, that's the one you're talking about.
Yeah,
and that's a strong cover. It seems like quite a simple but haunting cover. Like you say, there's this person in a Santa outfit. You can't. It's from a distance, so you need to really focus on them to see that something's wrong, which is always a great horror device, isn't it? Yeah. Something that looks recognisable from a distance, but there's something off about it. That's always creepy. But looking at the cover now, there's storytelling going on, because there's a path on it that splits into two, and there's footsteps going in one direction, and that's where this figure's walking from, covered in blood. And yet there's a light almost from a house, an unseen house, to the left.
So it could be like they've gone in the house and the door's been left open as they come out.
Yeah. And I love that. It's only that I'm looking at it now just thinking, what is this? What's going on?
Mm.
You know, there's a story there, which I think sometimes people lose sight of that, don't they? Sometimes they just try to do something striking, cool, graphic. But a horror comic has to make you, in some ways, go, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
A horror comic almost needs to have, it depends on the trope they're working on the area of horror, but there has to be a little moment of disturbing you, doesn't it? I think sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, if you were going to do a Giallo comic, what kind of cover would you have for a Giallo comic? Would you have something that's like a frame from a Giallo movie, or would you do the cover like a classic Giallo movie poster? Do you know what I mean?
I think there's some Giallo cliches, aren't there?
Yeah.
So the fly in the corner of the eyeball, and or the picture of the nun covered in blood. You immediately know that's a Giallo kind of vibe, don't you? You know. I'm a fan of the Giallo movies. I don't think we've really got there in comics. So I think it's such an abstract format, a Giallo movie, isn't it? It's hard to translate.
Very hard to translate, if at all possible. I don't know if it is.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them don't make sense, Giallo movies.
No.
There's no two ways about it. They just don't. They're just sort of abstract images sort of linked together, aren't they? Yeah.
Soundtracks make such a difference.
That's a big part of it. Yeah.
When you're watching Suspiria, you're like, what the fuck is going on?
It's almost if you wanted to create a Giallo comic, you know, get some sort of synth artist to do a soundtrack for it, so you can say to people, listen to this when you're reading this and it will all make sense. Do you know what I mean? Because it's such an experience, isn't it, that sort of genre? I think you're right, Tony, like depending on the genre, it has to do sort of so many different things. With a superhero comic, it doesn't have to stretch too far, does it? I mean in issue 1 you've got to see the hero. The ongoing issues, we like to see the heroes fighting someone. Do you know what I mean? Or, you know, see something that's going to happen.
Usually,
within the book.
issue 1s, I'll give a pass to being relatively bland, the covers.
Yeah,
because
but horror
they don't know what they're
getting.
getting.
Horror doesn't really get that benefit, though, does it?
No.
It's got to grab you, hasn't it?
Horror covers at the moment are making the mistake of just being dark.
Yeah.
There's too much just plain darkness going on with not enough visual, you know, because unfortunately, I think horror comics are one of the few genres in comics that follows the movies more than the comics.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. What's popular in the movies, you'll see a comic be made of it a couple of months down the line.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and there's certain artists. I think there's someone like Jock did Witches.
Well, Martin Simmons is another one.
And Martin Simmons.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Martin Simmons does a lot more. There's a lot more visuals. I mean, certainly, like you see
iconography and stuff in them.
The Dracula covers. There's some narrative going on there that what you're going to see. And I think when you have especially when a mini series, which predominantly these days, especially in indie comics, that's what we're getting, isn't it? Like a 6-issue mini series. You know, they're not really ongoings. And even the ones that people say, oh, but what about this series? They're normally a 6-issue arc, 6-issue arc, 6-issue arc, isn't it? So even if it is an ongoing. But I think sometimes there's a danger when you have an artist like for instance Jock with Witches. Witches was like I struggle. I enjoyed that first trade as well. I didn't get back to the series, and I can remember the first cover, but I can't tell you any other covers from the series.
Okay.
Do you think that's an issue for horror comics?
I was buying it off the shelf. I was buying it off the shelf, and I had trouble remembering whether I bought that issue or not.
Oh, okay.
It's the same.
That's troublesome.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
And that's not to say that the art's not good, but if you have like 3 or 4 of the same thing, you could end up double dipping without really.
I've done it loads of times.
Yeah. But I think horror stories, especially if they've got a couple of issues, you have to grab hold of the narrative, don't you? You have the first one to sort of give a symbolic idea, but if you've got an issue 2, issue 3, issue 4, surely there's got to be something that resonates with whatever's being told within the pages.
Yeah, I think there's got to be an element you can pull out from the pages inside, and if you haven't got that moment, I'd be concerned more about the interior of the comic.
Yeah. It doesn't always have to tell, you know, to give you a snapshot as well. The Walking Dead, I mean, we've talked about that many times. There were so many covers of that, which were symbolic to something that was going to happen, like, you know, just a gun to someone's head, you might not necessarily see that specific panel in the book, but you got a sense of something that was happening, didn't you, that made you want to read.
Storytelling. Yeah. So you need it. Yeah.
And zombies, I think that's a genre that, of all of the horror ones in terms of covers, the covers can get a bit samey. Is it just me, or is it just like...
I think sometimes they're a bit brighter than some of the, you know, the ghost ones or the witch ones or stuff like that, which I didn't mind so much.
Yeah.
I was kind of like looking through some of the horror covers today, and like the Marvel zombies coming up, and it's like they're homaging every single zombie film, and it's like, this doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah, I'm done with the homages to...
The one that got me recently is that, I think you recommended it, Vince, first issue. I've read the first 3. Is it Phantom Road? That one?
Yeah.
And I went to buy the next issue, and I couldn't for the life of me work out what the next issue was, because the covers are so similar.
Yeah. First cover was great, but I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, they just seem the same almost. Yeah.
It's like if you laid your comic series one next to another, there should be, for me, like not a jarring change between each issue, but such a massive contrast, so they're not just all tonally very similar. And you're like, okay,
you need to be careful with that, even if you've got like some sort of format. Just say you had a book where, you know, you got a 6-issue series, and for each of those 6 issues you've got a different one of the main characters' face front and center. I think The Wicked and the Divine did that for like a bunch of issues, didn't it? Back in the day.
God knows.
But just say you had that and it's a different character. There's still got to be a story there, isn't it? There's still got to be a reason for that being the cover. I think that's something that maybe we don't say when we talk about covers. It has to be a cover for a reason. Otherwise, why is it there? Otherwise, you just...
it's a strange
you got to be able to see it
beast
from across the
nowadays.
room.
Yeah. Because like how strong are the covers got to be for people to pick him up?
You're basically in a cover in the middle of 400 other covers. You've got to be noticeable.
Yeah.
There was, I mean, I've got my sort of comicsology sort of library, so I open in front of me, and there's some series, because what usually happens is I buy an issue and then I'm like, this is really good, I'm going to buy the next 3 or 4 issues. So I can see a bunch of covers in a line next to each other. And I remember when I got the Alien adaptation. Do you remember I talked about that, the original script adaptation thing?
Yeah.
And I can see what they're going for with the design of those covers, but it doesn't really. You see them next to each other, and they're just very much. There's nothing really that jumps out. There's no.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, they're some nice art. It looks twisted. It looks a bit creepy, but there's nothing there. And it's not a horror comic, but
a lot of those Alien covers, especially the more recent series, look like they're aping movie posters.
Yeah.
And they can't do it because it's out every month. You've got to draw your eye to it. It's got to be attention seeking. It's got to be action. It's got to be interesting.
Yeah.
And just that sort of, it's almost too design heavy for me.
Yeah.
There's a couple of series here. I mean, it's not horror, but Parker Girls. Obviously, I went on a tangent and just read all of that series. But each cover's different. It's an individual story cover. And another one here, Plush. We used to talk about the covers when we were talking about Plush as it was coming out. The the cover of the next one looks, what the hell's going on there? That's kind of what you want, isn't it? You want a punchy, a sort of question, to get the people hooked and in. If you've got a nice issue 1 cover, you can use it for the trade. So some of the best horror covers I've seen, usually that I remember them. And they're sure enough, they're the cover of the trade. I can't remember issue 2 or 3 or 4. The Nice House on the Lake. Absolutely love that issue 1 cover. Don't know if you remember it. There's a sort of female. Her sort of top of her nose and her eyes are poking out of a lake. Essentially, it's like she's just rising from a lake, but it's full of bones. She's surrounded by skeletons. And there's a sort of a sunset in the background that you can only just see. Hugely striking image. I remember seeing that and just think, oh, I want to read that book. And sure enough, I did. There down the line. But I can't tell you what the other covers look like.
There's a lot of that going on at the moment.
Yeah.
I think especially at DC, a lot of James Tynan's books are very samey covers, man. I'd be all over them, but I can never figure out what I've read and what I haven't.
Yeah, that's a shame. Feels like they
Yeah.
kind of need a real a style for each one that makes
Yeah,
them
but
stand out from the other.
do you remember buying, I don't know, 2000 AD or Battle Action every week? And you'd know, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Mm.
straight
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. Yeah. What helped with those sort of books, those classic sort of books, is because they were anthologies. They could just whack a different cover on the character.
Yeah, I
on the
mean,
cover.
even Spider-Man Weekly was the same. You know, you always knew.
Yeah.
But
you'd see, like, I mean, Spider-Man will always be there, different villain. So you knew, I know where I am with this one. I haven't bought this one already.
I mean, I'm rewriting all my sort of cataloguing all my comics at the moment as a little project, and I've had to leave 40 pages in this notebook just for Batman titles.
Bloody hell.
It's not just because you can't remember which issue you're on. You can't remember which bloody comic you're reading.
Fucking hell.
Bloody hell. But I mean, I'm always intrigued by a comic book cover, especially a horror book comic book cover. I find also, I gotta say it, sometimes horror comic book covers, the inside, it doesn't live up to the brilliance of the cover that you get.
That's always been a big thing with horror comics, isn't it?
Yeah.
And God bless them. Look at some of the beautiful, amazing artwork we saw on stuff like Eerie, Creepy, Heavy Metal.
Yeah.
House of Mystery, EC. Sometimes you think, oh, okay.
Especially
House of Mystery and
on
House.
the cover. You get a Frazetta on the cover. How can you live up to that?
Yeah,
on the interior?
It's a bit like a paperback cover, wasn't it? They were a bit like that sort of thing, weren't they? These amazing pieces of art. We used to get that with House of Mystery and House of Secrets and Ghosts and stuff at DC. You get this like massive O. Henry moment on the cover, and it kind of often wouldn't live up to it inside. Often it would, some great stuff. But sometimes you think, oh, that's a shame. That cover's so iconic.
Do you think a horror cover, depending on your story, like, it needs to be quite strikingly different? Even if it's the same artist, I just want to try and get this right. It's the same artist doing the interiors as who's doing the cover. But the cover should be strikingly different enough to catch your eye so it doesn't look like more of the same when you're opening the book. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I sort of think I'm rewinding to the Jock Witches stuff there, because there was very much a thematic art going all the way through it, but there was not necessarily a differentiation between the cover and the art. Whereas for me, I always think a cover should pop. Do you know what I mean? It should always be the calling card. It's the business card for a comic, isn't it? Really, it is the.
I think it's got to be horses for courses on that. Yeah, I think you've got to take it on a case by case basis. Like we are fans. I think I'm saying this right. We are fans of the same comic artist on the cover as the interior.
Totally. Yeah.
Sometimes you feel a bit fooled, don't you?
They seem to have been moving more and more away from that.
Yeah.
Someone the other day was calling, would be great if the interior artist had a shot at doing the cover, but the cover game for comics now seems to be just to generate money. The interior seems to be secondary.
Buy a Vampirella comic and there's 30 different variants.
Yeah. But I mean, and I know what you're saying, Tony, and I totally agree. But when it comes to doing the cover, there's got to be a bit of a thought to not make it different from the inside. But
I almost find like you grab a moment from the interior and you give it a twist.
Yeah.
It's, to me, that's kind of, so you get that iconic moment where, I don't know, the Punisher's looking down his scope at Spider-Man or something, and you give it on the cover, you give it a dramatic twist.
Yeah. No,
something like that.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
totally.
What do you think doesn't work when in some horror covers that we've seen? We don't have to name. Well, I mean, I can't think of any that I would name and shame. But if some covers we've seen doesn't really work for a horror cover, it's not doing the book justice.
Too dark. So it's a lovely bit of artwork, mate. Well done, but it's just not a cover. I think people need to say that occasionally to people.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just can't really make out what it is. There's a load of black covers with just small images and stuff like that. It's all very clever, but just don't work as a cover.
I also, on the other side of that, I'm thinking about some of the crazy sort of Avatar press. You remember the sort of Jason Burrows sort of covers?
Yeah,
love them, but so much line work, that is too much. Does that
I
make
think the
sense?
Jose Rip stuff.
Yeah.
Depends how focused it is on that. If it's just a mess of backgrounds as well, the super detailed backgrounds sometimes.
But sometimes I've seen his stuff and know I'm in awe of it. Sometimes it makes me feel ill. So I don't want to look at this anymore.
Yeah.
I think some of the best work he's done for ages is on the current Wolverine book.
Okay.
It's much more focused. Yeah.
I didn't know he was doing that.
Yeah, it's really good.
We've picked out a couple of covers. We picked one each, and we've got a special mention that we're going to talk about as well. Like some classic horror covers, and certainly, please, when you hear this episode, continue the discussion on the Slack, on social media. Shout out some of your favourites. But we picked one each. Shall we do the classic one at the end? Just sort of say, okay. Here's one of the daddies. Who wants to go first?
Go on, you go first, Fee.
Okay.
Yeah.
I picked a more recent book. I think when we were picking them, we've got them from different sort of areas of time, I think.
I gave myself certain rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And mine was just because I was just thinking a horror cover that just completely grabbed me and I couldn't stop staring at it. And it is from the series The Plot. And it's the cover of issue 2 of The Plot. If you don't know that, who published that? Was that Aftershock? Was that Aftershock? I can't remember. It's bloody.
I'm not sure. It looks like a cover of theirs.
Yeah. And it's very It's a sort of it is a dark cover, but of like blackened water with a female face. She looks like they're about to be dragged underwater, so they're only their sort of their cheeks and the water's going into her mouth, and she's sort of looking up, and you can see a look of fear quite clearly. That's front and center, the look of fear in the eyes. And there's the detail of the hair sort of floating on the surface of the water. But from the water, there are these clawed, bony, witch-like, lots of hands that seem to be rising up to grab this person. That's been one of my favourite covers for years, actually. So when I was thinking about it, I had to think, should I just Google classic horror covers, of which you'll just get a lot of Tales from the Crypt stuff, which is amazing. But this, for me, and I do see what you mean, Tony, in terms of like darkness, but for this, the darkness told a story.
No, it's got a central bright image you can make from across the room, that one.
And the black water as well. The black is the liquid, and it just looks, it's a moment of terror. That is also, as I was saying, it's a moment that you may not necessarily see in the book, but it's symbolic that makes you think that is a horror image. That is a scary.
Yeah.
It is a scary image. Can you imagine? Because sometimes when it comes to horror, we live vicariously through the people who are running away from the evil. There is always the what would you do in that situation? Oh God, if that was me, if that was me, I'd just kick him in the face. Stupid clown. But I think any moment when a piece of art can make you think, that would be terrifying if I was in, I don't know what the story is behind that, but that's a nightmare scenario. So the plot number 2, we'll put these on the, that was my pick. I'm just gonna make sure I get the artist right. So if anyone, because I don't want to miss that out. So who wants to go next?
Go on, Dan, you go.
I'll do mine. My one's a bit of a strange one. I've got like a folder on my computer of all these little images that I've sort of taken from somewhere that I really liked. And I remember this one because we were talking about it. It's from the Lazarus Chronicles issue 1 by an artist called Bud Root, who's very Arthur Adams.
Eccentric.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was kind of
is it Cave Woman? Is that the name of his comic?
Yes. He's a bit of a good girl artist. And in this one, there's kind of like an oversized zombie who's kind of lazily about to bite into this young girl's head as she's desperately trying to claw away from him. And when I first saw it years ago, this issue came out in like 2006.
Right.
So it's 20 years old. I remember seeing the cover thing. That's horrible. And like, there's the expression on the zombie's face, which is really kind of just like, I'm doing this now and not bothered by it. But the girl's absolutely like crying and tearful. And it just stuck with me. I was like,
it's a great image, that.
Yeah, it's horrible. And I'd pick that comic up and read it. I've just been looking at it on eBay actually to see what the comic's like. Maybe I'll get it.
Yeah, he's a bit of a sort of underground hero, isn't he? Because he kind of just. I think he got turned down by DC or Marvel or someone, didn't he? He tried to show them, and they went, "No, son."
No.
And he just sort of went his own way. I think he's a bit of an indie comics legend,
Yeah,
isn't he?
he's kind of like, I can see if we like doing that. The Jungle Girl, was it?
Cave Woman.
Cave Woman. That's it.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of issues of that. So it's kind of like a bit like our guest from a couple of weeks ago, Terry Moore, like just kind of went his own way, did his own thing.
Yeah.
Maybe not as had much success.
Beautiful
but...
line work though as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so good. That cover's got a touch of the Wrightson about it for me as well, with the monster's face.
So
yeah.
It's the kind of the face is all fucked up and offset, and eyes are not looking in the same direction.
Yeah,
and sort of tongue's kind of like licking the side of the head is about to chomp down.
All been there.
Yeah,
God,
horrible.
It's once again that nightmare scenario, isn't it? It's that moment 2 seconds after that cover.
Yeah,
what's gonna
what's gonna happen?
Horrific. Joshua Hickson was.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it was the artist of the plot. I didn't want to leave that out just in case I don't want anyone shouting at me.
Yeah.
I think it's that classic thing as well, like where you're loading up like we said about the storytelling, loading up. This is just about to happen. It's weird that because the one we're going to talk about later, the event has happened.
Yeah.
And we're looking at the aftermath of it, which is quite grisly. But a lot of these comics, you see the moments preceding something absolutely fucking horrible happening, and oh god. And you want to find out. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, sometimes they're just moments in time, aren't they?
Again, it's storytelling, man, is what it's doing. It's telling you a story in that one image that makes you interested to buy it.
Yeah.
Like you've been looking for it on eBay,
Yeah.
And like certainly, if it's
probably not even in the comic, that scene.
Might not be. Yeah, very, very good chance it won't be. Like a lot of eerie and creepy covers.
Yeah.
But they got my money, so it's too late.
Yeah,
exactly. Sometimes it's worth it for the cover. Sometimes I don't mind buying a comic because I just love the cover so much.
Yeah. There's totally that, and certainly I would say that the variant cover business is what it is, probably because of a lot of that. I would imagine.
And in the case of Dynamite, people like boobs.
Yeah.
Just go and buy a Vampirella cover. I dare you.
Stupid stuff like the cat variants and cosplay variants. So okay, if you want to get that, man, that's on you. But
yeah.
When they do like Marvel comics do Sonic or something, I'm like, mate, no, that's just rinsing someone's wallet.
Yeah.
Tony.
My one. So I set some, as I said earlier, I set some rules out for myself because it would be easy for me because I'm a massive EC fan. I about a couple of years ago, I did a pod about Bernie Krigstein and EC with Heyman, and I read all of EC, and I loved it. Absolutely beautiful. And I'm also a Warren fan. I mean, also the DC horror books, I think particularly are very good. House Mystery, House of Secrets, stuff like that. So I thought, no, I'm going to do a modern book, see how well they do it today. And I'm going to limit myself to the big two. And almost the big two use horror in different ways than you would get from just, an Avatar book or something like that. You just want to see you eating brains or something, So using the horror aesthetic in a mainstream production, and but warnings, this series comes from is dog shit. This is a dog shit comic series, but the covers and the art by Carl Holtz are fucking outstanding, and you will understand why I say it's a dog shit series. So this is Man-Thing, the 2004 3-issue comic series from Marvel Comics. This will make you realize why it's a prequel to the movie, written by the writer of the movie.
Okay.
If anyone's seen the movie.
I've not seen the movie.
Sorry, I just felt a little bit sick.
Sick in the mouth.
Man-Thing barely appears in this comic.
Yeah.
He barely appears until you get to issue 3.
It's totally like the cover you picked is like the cover betrays the reader.
Absolutely, completely. Yeah. But because I'm on this big Carl Holtz kick at the moment, look, I posted some of his stuff on the Slack today and people comment on it. This cover makes it right for me. Now it's a single image of the Man-Thing creature, but with subtle changes that allow for storytelling, which is interesting.
It's fucking beautiful cover. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. And as we all know, I think he's done this cover and then they've gone, oh fuck, we've got to add the title of the comic somewhere. I think there is a bit of that.
Yeah,
As they sort of cram it down the bottom, don't they? Yeah. But as we all know, what knows fear burns at the man things touch. And what they've incorporated within the body of the man thing, who's been used in so many different ways. I mean, he was in the Thunderbolts at one point, all these sort of different ways he's been used, since Gerber wrote his brilliant series about him, is they've incorporated the faces and the skeletons of the people who have burned at his touch with like fright masks on them, almost like their faces in twisted fear.
Yeah.
And I really like that. I think that tells a story that is fucking so much more interesting than the comic. But it just, there's a storytelling to it. There's an iconography to it that just is immediate. It's beautifully told as a single person image sort of thing. And it's also a poster that I would put on my wall.
Totally.
I think it's
also body horror, complete body horror.
Yeah.
It's we're seeing ribs, we're seeing, it's gore without gore, isn't it? It's that.
It is, yeah. Yeah. And it talks about the story by just that single thing that happens on the cover. Honestly, what they were thinking of with this comic, I don't know. But why Cole Holtz isn't doing a Legion of Monsters ongoing or something like that, Werewolf by Night type thing, I don't know. But he's brilliant.
He is a
the Ravencroft series. He did the covers for that, which is an interesting enough series. The Demolition Man's in it, but he did all the covers for it. He's done some other Marvel works recently, a sort of kind of horror tinged Cap and Falcon story, which came out recently. But yeah, I just really like that cover.
It's a cover as well that you will just keep staring at. And I've been staring at it for a couple of minutes now, right? And like you say, Tony, there's so many little details. The bones, the moss, just the organic horror going on. Now, one of the figures, they obviously have that sort of screaming death face, and it looks like, and we're seeing lots of roots, tendrils, etc. Almost like veins around this creature. It looks like a snake traveling into this guy's mouth, right?
Yeah.
Rather than a root. I've been staring at this, trying to find the snake's head.
Yeah, it could well be because it's from the bio, isn't there? There's snakes and stuff around there. I think that's fine.
So I'm going to have to come back to this because if I keep looking at this, we'll never get the rest of the show done. But I'm sure there's a snake head on here.
I like and just the red eyes set it off. If I was going to quibble, I think on a digital read, the background is a little plain. I'd have made it much richer blood red in the background. That's the only side.
I'd have been tempted to go for like a blue.
Okay.
But then like the eyes are cold blue, and then you got the red heat of the eyes to make them pop.
Yeah.
Beautiful image there.
Wow. There you go. One of my favourite characters as well. So that's kind of one of the reasons I went for it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good shout, man.
Yeah. Marvel Knights as well. There you go. Marvel Knights series.
Classic.
They didn't do badly, did they?
Yeah. Before we go on and talk about the classic, put a quick shout out to just on the socials. And Lee Grice, lovely Lee Grice, hello Lee. He immediately replied because we said, "What makes a good horror comic cover?" And he said, "Eyes and teeth." And he's not normally with a lot of horror covers. You do get a lot of that. Because there is the fear in someone's eyes or the teeth of the monster. And he posted a couple of examples. One of them is the cover to a Rawhead Rex graphic novel from Eclipse. Remember that film?
Look, he's written that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Indeed.
They really changed the monster in that because it's basically just like a great big giant knob running around.
Oh dear. And the cover of that is just a load of teeth. There is this gave me Giallo like vibes actually because I think it reminds me
I get that.
A Suspiria image. There's a cover of Misty from 1st of July 1978. The day the sky grew dark, but it's just a classic sort of image of a frightened female figure. But there is that classic frame from Suspiria, isn't it? Does that make sense? That it's got that kind of look of fear in her eyes. That's a great sort of cover. There's a Misty cover as well. Another one which is the little white dot, which Lee actually said when he was a kid gave him nightmares. This was pre-Ring, everything else. A creature reaching out of a TV towards someone who has fallen asleep. That's a great classic sort of image. That artwork as well, sort of reminiscent to like the sort of the Marvel sort of horror style.
Yeah,
especially of the sort of vampiric like character. And he also a cover that I've spoken about on the show once before, which was the issue 1 of a series called Colder, which haunted me for the longest time. I couldn't stop looking at it, and the series is just really weird. And it's like a figure literally reaching their face, their hand under their lip, and like they're touching like their eyeball. You got to see it for yourself. It is a horrific image and a brilliant example of a striking horror concept that you probably won't see in the book, but makes you think, what the fuck? That I've never forgotten that cover. And Mike Powell,
if you look at his Twitter, he was at Bristol.
Oh, okay.
There you go. And certainly he replied, what makes a good horror cover? And he said, any of these. And you can just see the Man Thing.
Nice bit of Man Thing there. There's a giant-sized Man Thing in that picture as well, interestingly.
Oh, there's Cryptoterror, Weird Science, Swamp Thing, Tomb of Dracula, Giants. There's is it Shock? There's Ghostly Hordes.
Witching Hour, Monster Frankenstein. Yeah. Tomb of Dracula.
Basically the old classics. And what a beautiful selection of comics that is. And speaking of classics, the one we wanted to sort of dovetail this conversation with, I think it goes without saying, it was one you brought up, Dan, immediately, and is almost one of the classic when you think about horror covers or a shocking moment. It's got to be, if we were doing an MTV top 10, surely this has got to be in there somewhere.
It's got to be in there.
Yeah. Which one is it then?
It's the crime suspense stories, number 22, with the Tony. You mentioned the artist because we've been on
Johnny
this.
Craig, yeah,
we've been on this before, and it's the one where the woman's severed head. Well, you don't know if it is severed because the cover implies that, but you don't actually see any kind of wound on her. Or she's looking kind of outward and a mouth drooling, and there's a body on the bottom. But it's the storytelling there. The guy's got a bloody axe holding her head up, and the body's underneath. But it's like it could be just another person laying there. That could be just she's kind of. Do you know what I mean? It's all implied.
Yeah. But he didn't imply it, and he didn't do it subtle enough that the book didn't get in trouble.
Yeah,
this was quoted in the hearings, wasn't it? I know Gaines gave evidence, didn't he? I think you can hear the recording of it. You can find it online of Gaines's testimony at the hearing in relation to horror comics and crime comics and stuff, which obviously was the downfall of EC.
Yeah.
That whole seduction of the innocent was absolutely a massive pile of crap. He basically just found a load of street kids and said, we were like troubled anyway, and said, do comics make you violent? And they went, yeah. Job done. Write that up, son. Yeah. Ipso facto.
Yeah, because everyone read comics, including the troublesome kids that he bumped it,
Genghis Khan, he loved comics. That's why he slowly drove across Asia.
Yeah.
Fuck's sake.
Yeah, Gaines gave evidence about this, but allegedly was on what do you call it? Thinning tablets, not thinning tablets, fasting tablets. Diet tablets and amphetamine type things, and didn't really make much sense. But they talk about the amount of blood that's on the axe and stuff like that. It's an interesting one. Johnny Craig was, a mainstay at EC along with a lot of other people, but there's quite an interesting history just to this cover and the amount of blood on the axe and where the head's held and what it says and whether it brought them down. But there were some covers similar to this, but this I think was one of the ones that was picked out and discussed. Yeah,
it's fair play because it's a important image. But like I said earlier, you usually see before the moment's happened. This is after horrific event presumably has taken place. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and when you look at it, I mean, a third of it is titles, if not more, slightly more.
Yeah. But there's a lot going on. Like you got the woman's skirt is slightly ruffled and pulled up, and then like the axe menacingly hanging over her. The guy's groin right overpowering. There's a lot of symbology going on in this.
Yeah, there's what Freud would make of that, where he's holding the axe and where his hand is, and there's a lot of that going on there, isn't there? Yeah.
Wherever faces and it's like right by his genitals. It's like there's You don't have to be an absolute wally to look at this image and see that it's absolutely loaded to the gills with symbology and yeah.
Forget homage. Would they do a cover like this now? I think they probably would. Do you think?
You reckon? I reckon. No way from one of the bigger companies.
Oh yeah, no, I
I
don't think. Obviously, you're not going to get it from any of the big publishers, but certainly.
Who's your mates who do all the horror stuff? They did Giallo, a comic called Giallo, didn't they?
Hellbound
would do it.
Yeah.
I think they do it, wouldn't they?
I would.
Yeah.
Joey Oliveira would probably do it.
Yeah. Afterlight Comics and Hellbound Media, I think they're pretty much both untouchable in the UK indie scene. They're the guiding lights of horror for me.
Yeah.
Certainly as publishers as well, concentrated horror publishers. Yeah, there are. I don't know. It's an interesting question. I think publishers would and have done similar sort of covers, but sometimes they're so. I think the difference is print runs, readership. Who's going to see it? You know, how many people saw this book back in the day compared to, I don't know, you just.
That was on newsstands, man, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Whereas you
it.
just, you know, your small press, you're photocopying your book, and you've got a horrific image on your cover. You may not incur the wrath of 1950s.
Yeah, well,
they've closed the doors now, haven't they? The Comics Code they've done now. They've closed down, haven't they? Yeah.
It was a bit of a toothless beast as far as I
went that way, didn't it?
Yeah.
Although I don't think Kevin O'Neill would agree with you.
No, true.
But for his style,
I think it's also
that's ridiculous.
I know. Yeah,
it's just ridiculous.
I think also like just as society evolves, we become numb to a lot of these things anyway. You know, the stuff that was shocking, banned everywhere. You watch it now and you're just like, hey? Because
it's hard because you can see videos, you can go online and see videos, like social media videos of people actually getting killed. So when you've got like a kind of
live streaming from Ukraine,
you got some gory pictures. It's like, well, mate, what's this compared to reality? It's
the shock value when we were kids. And we would talk about, fucking hell, have you seen what's just happened in that comic? Or, you know, we managed to see some video nasty or something. There is an element of it's gone now because all you got to do is press two buttons and you're looking at all sorts on the internet, aren't you, I suppose?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
The real world is far more horrific.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas. Anyway.
See some of the porn we look at.
So, yeah, I think keep surprising us, horror creators. Keep doing stuff that's going to entice us, get us to read your books. Certainly, this week, I picked a few books. One of them had a better cover than the story on the inside.
Okay.
And the other one, I absolutely loved the story. I love it as a whole, but maybe the cover could have been a bit punchier. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's interesting sometimes that, and we've said this before. Sometimes when we recommend a book, you know, it's a shame that the cover doesn't do the amazingness that's within the pages justice. Yeah. So it can work
the old
both ways,
VHS cover, isn't it? It sells a story in your head, and then when you get inside, it doesn't deliver.
Yeah. But another thing that we have been doing is the Eerie books. Right, we've been looking at this before we get onto the shout-outs. Seeing as we're on the old school comics vibe, you know, we're talking about EC, you know, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Before we get onto our shout-outs and recommendations, we of course have been going through the old spooky collections, that insane Humble Bundle collection that will probably freeze up your computer when you download it if you because they.
That's what happened to me.
Yeah. I did get a message and you're running low on storage space. I was like, what?
Yeah. So apologies to anyone who snapped up that Humble Bundle. We hope you got some USBs or some storage.
I was trying to transfer mine into my Dropbox and it was just taking so long.
Yeah. It's purely because these are big, amazing collections of classic
completely
comics.
uncompressed files.
Completely uncompressed. So one of them is like 1.8 gig, I believe, just for one book. But we're going through some of these old spooky books because Tony couldn't get it to work properly. He's gone for another Warren publication, haven't you?
Yeah,
Tony?
I've gone.
Yeah.
Shall I do mine first then? So
Yeah, because we're picking a story for all of October. We're picking a little tale, a little short that we've read that enjoyed, and we just want to talk about it a little bit. Yeah.
So Eerie and Creepy are both members of the Warren family of comics, as was or magazines. You had to call them magazines because that way they didn't get caught by the Comics Code. Well, the same as Vampirella actually. And there's another one which was quite a short-lived one called 1984. 1984 it's called. And so I was sitting there watching my computer trying to fucking not die. And I had a long box next to me, a magazine box. And I thought, I've got a Warren magazine there. What's that? Oh, it's 1984. I'll just do that. That seems easier to me. So I just turned my computer off, gave it a cuddle, and read this. And the story I'm picking is so it's issue 5. Have a look at 1984 issue 5, listeners, and you guys, because the cover's like really good. It's like it looks like something out of Nightbreed to me.
Nice
when you see it. Have you got it on your computer, or should I send you a picture of it?
So give me the title again.
Yeah, I think you sent us a picture of it. Yeah, it looks
1984 issue 5. I'll send it to you now anyway. But yeah, so it's it's for all intents and purposes it's the same magazine but without the same Crypt Keeper kind of characters, you know.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, so it's I was reading through this and I thought, oh, this is great. There's I think I accidentally sent you the wrong kind of thing there, but yeah.
No worries.
So it's the story I've chosen is I Wonder Who's Squeezing Her Now. And it's written by Nicola Cootie, pencils by Ernie Collin, inks by Wally Wood. I had a little read into this, and it actually was created in 71. This is 76. So created in 71 by that team for a magazine that never came out, a magazine that was going to be called, believe it or not, POW in the States. And they decided to use it. Warren took it on and used it because these guys were Warren guys. The pencils came through, and the way they describe it is the pencils were very soft. I don't know if he was using like a 4B or something, but it was almost like thumbnails. Because if you look at this, it very much is early 70s Wally Wood. If you go, because Wally Wood, I think he died 81, was it? I think. Wally Wood's like the most interesting comics creator out there, but he had a sort of slow decline into madness, as he would describe it, and he drew a lot of erotic stuff towards the end. So this is kind of earlier. So this has that illustrative, old school, post DC Warren kind of era. There's almost like a Mad Men quality to the way people are dressed in this, and it's a story of a hard-working man. He goes in the office every day. He works. He's hard put upon in the office. He puts a shirt and tie and goes in every day. And he's got this beautiful blonde wife who looks down on him, and he suspects her of fooling around behind his back with much more successful, richer men. One day he comes home and he finds loose change in the marital bed, and he has an argument with her because it's clearly fallen out of the pocket of some bloke who's been lying in their bed with her, you know. And he has this massive argument, and they fall out, and it's looking like he's not going to be able to see his kids, and he's going to have to pay her money for the rest of their life. So he buys a gun, and he goes to the house to kill her. And this is apparently where Cootie and Wood had an argument, because Wood wanted the ending of this to be where he just shoots them all and kills them all. I think that was fairly Wood style. I don't think he was quite right in the head at the time. And but Cootie talked him around, and what actually happens is he goes around the house and he looks through the window of this house, his house that he's not allowed to go into anymore, and he sees the new boyfriend like having a go at her for having an affair with someone else, and he thinks, all right, there you go, that's sort of karma for you, and he throws the gun into the river and calls up a woman he fancies out of the office and arranges to meet her, and that's kind of the end of it. So there's got that still got an O. Henry thing, but it's not quite as violent in the end. There, it's not quite nihilistic, but just gorgeous, solid, black and white. Wood's hailed as one of the greats, and right when you see stuff like this, you think gorgeous black and white on a big magazine page, like you get with Eerie and Creepy. Loads of images. Brilliant facial acting, a look of desperation Wood draws so well in this. You know, he's just forced into this desperate corner to get this gun and go and kill people. I got mine at second mention for them, Strange Apparitions. I think it only cost me £2, this magazine. It's a bit dog-eared, but I think a lot of the old school Eerie's and Creepies are going to be. Yeah, it's just marvelous, just a marvelous bit of storytelling. Nice. like 2000 AD creators will always tell you, you can tell if someone can write if they can tell a story in 6 pages.
Yeah.
And these guys could. Yeah, really, really interesting, and a nice one to sort of read into a bit as well, you know. Yeah, that's my first one. That's my one for that one.
Nice.
What about you guys?
My one is from Volume 3 of the Eerie Archives, page 52. Art by Larry Warame, script by Ron White. This is a little story called Big Change. I noticed in some of these volumes, some of the we've talked about like they're 4 to 6 pages, but some of the stories do get a lot longer, don't they?
It can be, can't they? Yeah.
And they also can be pretty wordy sometimes. Just to let you know, when you go into like some of these archives, they can be pretty wordy comics, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. Have you found that, Dan, as you've been going through?
Yeah, sometimes I've started reading one and it's like, oh, this one doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And I just skip on.
Yeah.
There's so much, though.
There's so much. That's the beauty of it.
So many different styles on show Rad Art as well.
Yeah.
You know, there's some people in there, you know, like the Paul Neary stuff is really intricate lines. And then you get stuff like the Wally Wood stuff, which is just basic meat and potatoes storytelling. You know, it's interesting.
Yeah. And like this one, you know, I mean, we talked about, like, you know, how the older artists sort of mess about with panels, or, you know, they're doing some interesting stuff they couldn't necessarily do on some of their bigger work. This one is actually a more sort of formulaic. It's a story called Big Change, and I one thing I do love about these Eerie books as well is the little introduction that they have from the and this one says, ever wonder what happened to all those third-rate crooks who never quite made it in the big time crime? Groovy ghouls. And groovy ghouls, that's a real of its time moment. Here's a baleful tale about 2 such types who got tired of being flops and decided it's time for a big change. It's the classic Crypt Keeper type thing, isn't it? Whenever you hear something like that, because the Tales from the Crypt TV series and obviously the books, the comics, they all had that kind of vibe, don't they? So, and I've always been a fan of that. So I think when I read those, I'm already.
Well, it's amazing, those Tales from the Crypt series. It's amazing how much they stayed to the stories from the EC comics they were based on.
They really did, didn't they?
Yeah.
And this one is about a guy who's in a wheelchair. It starts near the end, before we just. And there's this old guy in a wheelchair saying, "My medicine, you must give me my medicine, please." And there's this young couple, and they just seemingly laugh at him because he's seemingly old and decrepit. He goes, "You don't understand," and we're going, "Oh, without your medicine, you'll die, and your money goes to your wife, and you know, and your wife goes to me. Your money." These 2 crooks, basically, these lovers, decided to try and get one over on an old, frail man who he's got a lot of money, lives in a big estate house. They think they can just sort of like she answers a job about being a maid, so they become a maid, and she woos him, eventually marries him, and while the other guy is working as like a butler, I think. So they just it's a classic story of these people who think they know what they're doing, screwing someone over. And it goes really badly because it turns out that the medicine, you know, he goes off into a room and they think he's died, but the medicine was to. And I'm just going to spoil this one, folks. You should check it out because it's a lovely little story. But the medicine was to stop him turning into a werewolf. So he turns into a werewolf and kills them. And I was like, get in! I just love it. It's simple. It's a simple, classic little tale. This one. There's just got it's the style is lovely line work. Is some ink washes. The artist, I've never really heard of the artist before. Larry Warame. Have you either of you guys heard of this?
Not really. No. Is this the one that you talked about, Dan?
Yeah, I was going to say I mentioned this one last week, Vince.
Oh, was it this?
It's this one. But to be fair, it's a great one. It's a cracker one. It stuck out for me.
Yeah, because it's the werewolf thing. That's why you've chosen it again, isn't it?
Yeah, because the one afterwards is a Gene Collin story.
Oh, nice.
Or Eugene Collin, which I noticed.
That's
pretty much the same person, which is actually a good one.
Yeah.
And the reason I noticed this is because we had like a werewolf and a vampire story. Dan, when you read it, did you notice the big? This is going to sound terrible. Like I like the art. But the people all had really big chins.
I didn't really notice it at the time.
Just go back and look at it. They've got like really
massive chins.
really massive chins.
What made me laugh about the entire story is like he's just about to say something about his medicine and he's always getting interrupted. It happens over and over.
Yeah.
If I don't take my medicine, they're like, it don't matter. We'll do this.
Yeah. But it does have that. It's got that lovely rhythm though, isn't it? It's that classic Tales from the Crypt type story. When I wasn't
sure the ending. What's he suggesting? We actually have quite a lot of him people around now, so I'm gonna have some more around. But it's like, is that nefarious? Like,
yeah. It is that sort of. I think that just plays into the whole. There's more horror to come kind of thing. Even though I didn't feel, because you kind of, the people get what they deserve, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
The good guy wins. The good guy just happens to be a bloodthirsty monster.
Yeah,
who kills people horribly.
I don't you know this, but I was looking on the shelves at Gosh yesterday, and they've started releasing these archives in paperback.
Oh, really?
The first archive came out last week. Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think about every 4 months each one. They're about 20 quid each. It's not too bad.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
I've noticed that with a lot of these supernatural ones, these stingers, and I'll bring up this Cullen one because it was the other one I enjoyed. First Blood is called. That's a vampire tale, obviously.
Right.
But they all have the same sort of format of like someone who thinks they're getting one over on someone, and only in the last couple of panels do they realise, actually, I've screwed all this up.
I think a lot of these stories owe a lot to the noir movie concept and novel concept, because they've all got that there's these rules to noir, aren't they, about don't trust the woman, they'll have someone over, someone is after money, there's almost like that thing going on in it, isn't there?
Yeah
like nobody's a good person almost.
It is like it's rare to feel sorry for someone in a lot of these books, isn't it, really?
So in some way they kind of deserved it.
I was also surprised in this volume. It is this volume. I'm just scanning through it. This volume has like an adaptation of like Boris Karloff Mummy.
Oh,
book.
Okay.
Like,
by who?
That one is. Let's have a look. That is, Wally Wood.
Oh, there you go.
But it is pretty much tells the whole story in about 8 pages, 5 or 6 pages. That is a real economic use of, and the artwork's bloody beautiful on that, actually, in terms of.
He's so good, man. He
nails the
I can recommend, if anyone is like into Wally Wood or any of those EC guys, I think it's only about 35 quid. You can get, how when they do these artist editions, they do the oversized editions. They did a best of EC stories artisan edition, which is the smaller version of the artist edition. It's only about 30 quid, but it's got the original pages in it, and it's got 3 stories by Wally Wood in it as well. There's Johnny Craig, he's in it as well.
Yeah.
All these people. It's well worth looking out. Yeah. Highly recommended.
I mean, I must say, Wally Wood was a name that I heard about in podcasts before really realising.
Yeah. A lot of people know him because he did some Daredevil and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. What I love about these archives is, like, you see these artists. One I talked about, the Gene Colan one. Probably around the same time they're doing some Marvel work, but doing something completely different and experimental with like panel layout and watercolors and ink washes and stuff.
You can have an experiment, can't you?
Yeah, it's fascinating to see. It's
the craft on the page, man.
Yeah. It's almost like now they're wise. Understand me when I'm saying this, everyone. It's sometimes they become less comic book artists and more book illustrators, if that makes sense. There's a sort of it's almost like they tap into another vein that sometimes they might have been restricted by the publishers they're working for.
There's a bit of a lot of the covers for example, the Conan books, which are similar in Conan, the black and white Conan magazine. Are similar. Is almost like the covers. You feel like the covers will be reused as paperback covers somewhere.
Yeah,
like a European edition of a sci-fi comic collection, sci-fi novel collection or something. But yeah, the interiors, I think there's evidence that they spend a lot more time on them than a lot of people did for your regular comic book as well.
Right.
I'm not sure whether they paid better. I guess maybe they did. I don't know. But you see, because they didn't come under the Comics Code Authority, they could also take those chances, which, like you say, you can have boobs and stuff in them.
Yeah. And so you do see them sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes, Dan, what was yours?
Mine, things from volume 2 or 3, and it's called It That Lurks. and it follows a couple of chaps on safari, and one of them's got like the kind of ranger hat with the leopard skin band that you'd always see in films of that sort of era, 1940s, 50s, 60s, like the classic good-looking guy going on a safari adventure, and he's a rough and tough guy. And they come across this pool, and there's a dinosaur in it. And like the scientist guy who's also the ranger is like, man, I can't believe this. Look, there's a dinosaur still alive. So I've got a trank gun here. I can shoot it, take it back, and I'll be like famous. I can't believe this is still knocking around. So he shoots the thing in the face, and it plunges into the pool. And he's like, oh, I've got to run and get it out, otherwise it's going to be lost in there. So he kind of runs off, and his mate's like, what are you doing? You can't do that. That's nuts. So he goes off and
I love that. Dan's acting it out.
So he gets immersed in the pool, and he's gone. And his mate's like, what the fuck? So he says, I'm going to have to go back to the camp. And then he starts hearing his wife calling him, and like smells her perfume. And he turns around, and she's standing like 2 foot of water up to her knees, and she's sort of beckoning him into the lake. And as he goes in, she sort of like goes backwards, and he follows in, and then plunges to his death in the water, which is in some way it sort of suggests that the water has some kind of, the pond is some kind of sentient to it, but it can make you see what you most desire, and it draws people in that way, and they die. And that's what happened to him, because he had a longing for his wife, and the one before him wanted to be like a great discoverer. So yeah, well, I guess if you're on a field trip with a load of blokes, you're like, oh god, where's my wife? Sick of this.
Yeah,
all the farting in the tent, etc. So yeah, that's quite a fun one, and that's written by Archie Goodwin.
Oh, nice, good,
and art by Dan Adkins.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Dan's great. He did a lot of work for DC as well.
Lovely.
Oh,
as well.
Archie Goodwin's is like a massive comics hero, and he epics and all that sort of thing. Yeah, top geezer.
It's funny, like he shoots it. It looks a bit like a kind of Stegosaurus, but with like a kind of sharp teeth. And he's like, I'm going to go in and rescue it. It's like, mate, that fucking thing must be about 40 tons. What are you going to do? It's absolutely monstrous.
Yeah, that wasn't dialogue from the actual strip, by the way. That was just.
I'd read it if it was.
Yeah. Mate, what are you doing?
Yeah, what's going on, mate?
Have a word. Are you going to swim down and pull that dinosaur out of the lake?
What are you going to do? Follow your missus into a lake? Yeah. Fuck off, mate.
Yeah, having a laugh.
What are you doing here?
Turkish.
Yeah. Making sandwiches.
Anyway.
It's gone 9 o'clock.
It's gone 9 o'clock.
The seal was broken.
Yeah. The seal is broken.
Making sexist jokes.
Yeah, but tune in next week to see what other tales from Eerie and Creepy, and I will endeavour to pick a different one. I might pick what Dan did this week.
Yeah, just redo
it. Yeah.
But the way you tell it, I didn't know. And then Dan messaged just saying,
yeah,
I think I did this one last week.
And then when you said it, I suddenly thought, fucking hell, you did.
How did you manage to do that? You've got like literally terabytes of magazine.
Well, the thing is. And I was looking. I had a cursory glance at some of the later volumes, but I thought, no, I want to stick to the earlier volumes, because that seems to be. It's going to sound harsh, but it almost feels like there's the better quality stuff in a lot of the earlier ones.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I know Simon Russell was talking about this on the Slack. He's saying, look, it's almost like there's a number of different products here. Different kind of magazines. He was sort of saying which is your sort of favourite era, and you can certainly see the eras in them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, the art changes as well, doesn't it? Throughout.
Yeah,
there's times where you've recommended stuff here, and I've come along the next week with like, I found this in Comicsology. It's like, it's exactly the same fucking thing.
Yeah. That's because it's an audio medium, my friend. That's the beauty
of comics, though.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of comics. As long as they're there to be discovered, it doesn't matter who you are.
The eye of the reader.
Yeah, indeed.
But before we get on to more comics that you need to check out, do we have any shout-outs this week, gents?
I've got a series of them.
I do.
Yeah, so start off.
Right, okay. I'll get my notebook out.
Get your pen out. Inktober on the Slack is great this year.
Yes.
Really good. What are you doing, Dan? You're doing...
I'm doing Robtober.
Robtober.
That is insane what you're doing, Dan. I love it.
Your tweet yesterday, or your post yesterday saying, what's fucking Kid Deadpool all about?
Yeah, I don't know. I have no fucking idea. It's just like I've just done some kid blend bubblegum with the Deadpool mask on. I don't know what I was doing. It's rubbish. I hate it. But when you're doing it for a whole month, you just got to kind of not all of them are going to be winners.
Yeah.
Yeah. You did your own spin on it, didn't you? But it's well done to everyone. Keep going because everyone's doing some great work on there. Really, really good. Yeah, yeah. Our buddies over at Collosive Press have a new collection of strips coming out from comics legend Glen Daykin. 28 pages and A4 comics. It comes with an introduction only by Eddie Campbell, of all people. Just £8. Go over to collosive.com. You can get a copy there. Our buddies over at Cutaway Comics are kickstarting at the moment. I've backed this Inferno, The World Dies Screaming. It's the new Who Larger Universe, which is a spin-off by our chums at Cutaway Comics. It follows the John Pertwee, there you go, back again to him, titular Inferno series from the Third Doctor's era, with an alternate universe. It's an alternate universe story, and it's got beats taken from Mind of Evil as well. And it's on Kickstarter, and it looks amazing. Really does look good. And the thing with them is if you get a comic, you also get like a CD and an audio download and a commentary, and it's a really nice little package they do. Bomb Scares issue 1 is the newly rebooted anthology series from Time Bomb Comics. It's raising money for printing and creative payment over at Zoop, our buddies over at Zoop. Get this for a list of contributors: Liam Sharp, Alex Nino, Trevor Von Eden, bloody hell, Jimmy Broxton, who we talked about last week, Hunt Emerson, and more. Go to zoop.gg and you can go and back that. Another Zoop book. Imagine if Conan was an American in the early 20th century. He still wouldn't be as tough as Neil Fargo, coming your way, and it's the graphic novel from the mighty Howard Chayken on the Zoop publishing platform. It's also got cover art by our buddy Dave Johnson.
Wow.
I'm going to be all over this, guys.
That sounds great.
Sounds great. First, fist fights, gunfights, women and whiskey is the advert, so sign me up for that one.
That's a good weekend.
Yeah. Couple of personal ones. Tribute has a new graphic gospel out this week. For those that don't know what a graphic gospel art is, there are versions of a Tijuana Bible. Absolutely not safe for work. And they tend to tell a story about an incident that's happened to me in Foulpit at a comic convention. This one, it relates to me and might have me having sex with various prostitutes over a table while people are waiting for a Tilly Walden signing. But there you go. Limited numbers. The last one sold out so quickly. So go over to tributepress.co.uk and you get a copy of that. And final one for me is I was on the Mega City Book Club this week talking about the Light and Darkness War, which is where we talked about Archie Goodwin as well. Yeah, I love it. And have a listen. I really enjoyed talking about that book. I know Eamon basically had been putting out a few months on the trot saying, I'd really like to talk about this, but I can't get anyone to talk about it. And I was thinking, I don't want to go back on. I was only on there 5 minutes ago. See who else does it. I sat on my hands for a while. I said, I'll go on and I'd love to do it. And we had a great chat about it. I did a load of research. If you look at the show notes, there's some great old videos of UCACs from the 80s
really?
that I was at. Okay. Yeah, that are in the show notes.
Look forward to that.
Yeah,
that's weird though. There's like a bit like it's like a dream, isn't it? And then at some point he kind of wakes up and he's like, I've got to go back. And it's like I think we've all had that feeling of
it's
waking up from a dream and I want to get back to it.
It's like a Vietnam vet with PTSD, but crossed with like a John Carter thing. Where suddenly all of his old colleagues are alive, his brothers from his arms are alive, and he's fighting this weird dimension full of flying Viking ships and stuff. And it's beautifully drawn. Really good.
I think I just bought it off the rip, the trade, and I was like, oh, this is great. Loved it.
Yeah, it's lovely hardback of it. Yeah, really good. Then my one, guys.
Nice, Dan. What have you got?
I've got Underground Kingdom Comics Presents, a comic book anthology showcasing UK cartoonists. That's sailing towards this goal. Could do with a little bit more love on that one. We've got friends in that book, so definitely go check that one out. We've got the aforementioned Bloop and the Pigeon Pandemic by Alex Hahn. An 88-page full-color comic featuring Bloop, the green Martian scout who always finds trouble, arrives before Christmas. So an 88-page comic, that is a fantastic gift to kind of get a younger family member or for yourself.
And jump on this as soon as you hear the pod if you listen to the pod early, because I think it's only got 3 days left.
Yeah,
so, and they could do with, I think it's 10% shy of this goal.
Yeah,
so,
it needs a little bit of love to get there right over the line. We've got Adult Human Female, a giant-sized art calendar featuring girls of Jimmy Broxton's fully loaded comic book.
Okay.
And that needs a lot more attention to kind of help that get over the line. But if you like the aforementioned good girl art and all that kind of stuff, that's your bag, baby. And we've got a shout out to the great Craig Shields.
Oh, yeah. This is good. What he's done here. Yeah.
He's pimped out our acprecommends.com into a Halloween theme. And it's absolutely lovely. And every week, Craig updates the comics on there. So you click on it, you go to a link where you can buy and read more about all the titles we recommend in the recommend section of our show. And bringing back round to the horror, as you may or may not know, I'll be going to be crowdfunding a horror comic anthology over Halloween, and I'm giving you, the listener, a chance to get a comic strip in it.
Yes.
I'm looking for a 3-page script to be entered, and if you win, your comic would be in your script will be in the comic. As a rule of thumb, try and think nothing risky, then find something in a horror film nowadays: gore, monsters, demons, robots, any concept is acceptable. Would prefer it if you hadn't written a script before, had work published before. Like to give someone new a try at getting their script published in the comic and seeing it with finished art. If you win, we're going to send you out a bunch of copies. You'll get high-res files. You can do with that comic whatever you wish. If you want to put it into other anthologies, sell it, whatever, it's totally on you. You can stick it on your social, send to friends and family, whatever you want to do with that. All scripts you send in to get reviewed by a judging panel, and the winner will be decided by consensus. Deadline for entries is Friday the 21st of October. If you email your script to awesomecomicspod@gmail.com, that'd be fantastic, and look forward to reading those scripts as they come in.
Nice.
And lastly, but not least, is this Friday the 13th. We've got another drink and draw hosted by this chucklehead Tom Curry. Do pop along, and I presume we might be either doing something Halloween based or everyone catching up on a few of their Inktober prompts.
Oh yeah, that'd be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Try and get them on. I managed to keep on top of mine, but you never know. As it goes further into the month, it goes off piste. that works.
No, I've done exactly none.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go. But you set out to do none, so you've not.
I did think I might try and do it,
well.
and I forgot. Yeah.
You're doing well.
Yeah.
I came into late.
Low standards.
I was day late, and I was like, "Oh fuck it, I'll do the Robtober one." And
Robtober.
yeah, he put them.
What day's Wolverine?
Together. I don't think he's done Wolverine. Tomorrow is someone called Kane. I had to look that up.
From X-Force? One of my favourite Marvel characters.
Kane.
Mm-hmm.
Is he? He's got a short head. He's short black hair with a big red jacket on.
Red jacket, and he used to fire his hands. I fucking loved that character. He appeared X-Force #2. He fights Deadpool.
I was gonna have him smoking a big reefer and then put caned, but I don't think many people outside the UK would get that.
Do it anyway.
I'm gonna do it anyway. Yeah. If you get caned in the UK, that means you're either high on drink or drugs. So that's what I'm going to do.
There you go.
I can't do a whole month of people grimacing.
Yeah.
And posing.
No, Rob's done it for 40 years.
Boom.
He's better than Jim Lee. What?
I see someone put in the Slack, Jim Lee's live streaming his drawing now. Yeah. Somebody tell Rob.
Didn't you say someone altered that message? I wasn't calling out Rob or something. It's like, mate, you would totally do that. And everyone thinks you think you're better than Jim Lee.
Yeah. I just want to say for the record, what I said was just in jest. I prefer Jim Lee.
I know that. I always say, when I say Jim Lee, I always feel like Cliff Cumber's getting annoyed. But
if we say it too many times, does he appear behind us like Candyman or something?
That'd be quite a scary tale.
Oh, God.
Have
you noticed none of us have said the name again, just in case it happens?
No, God, no, not tempting fate. Like I said, I think through doing this show, after last week's ghost encounter with the pen shooting out the pen pot.
Oh yeah, you're being haunted, aren't you, Dan?
Someone's watching you, mate. I tell you now.
We're invoking some kind of dark rite, and
I hope it's not Kane, because if you bend over, he'll shoot one of his hands at you.
Oh God!
Why when he bends? Oh, why am I asking, Tony?
Nothing spooky's happened so far, which is a bit frustrating.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, you never know.
Still got a little bit left to go.
There's still recommendations left to go. So in the forthcoming week, here are some titles for you all to look out for, and check the ACP recommends page.
Yes.
Tony, what have you got first?
So I've got two. My first one is Illegal Batman, The Forgotten Batman, issue 1 of 3 by Ed Pincett, A4, black and white. there's a great 2-page intro by Chris Reynolds talking about what Batman really is. It's a really fun little intro. Is he the DC comic? Is he Adam West? Is he a cosplayer? A fan making a comic? What is Batman these days? Because he's kind of entrenched into our lives, isn't he, Batman? More for us probably than most people. But
he's also a man without a show. But
and
Warner Brothers bigwigs stomped on that.
But the thing is with it is it's a weird one, isn't it? Because there's so many versions of it now, aren't there?
Yeah.
Who is your Batman? There's not even, you can't even say that because there's so many different kinds, aren't there? I kind of like Adam West, but I also kind of like the animated show, and I love the comics, and
yeah,
it's a weird one. Anyway, so it talks a bit about that. Funny enough, this is the second week I've talked about a Batman parody, isn't it? The story takes place in 1975 and opens up with illegal Batman and a guy called Officer Sanford getting an award for doing so well. But after seeing the advances made in policing in Gotham, illegal Batman remains quiet and he doesn't say anything. And he was happier when there was crime, and now it's dropped to minimal levels. He's a bit restless. But dreams of foreboding arrive, and the following morning, illegal Batman then dresses up in a sort of gentleman's suit, as if he's going to the opera, carrying an old camera, and he goes up to meet the police and refuses to chase the villain on the top. And they all think, "What's happened to Batman? He's gone a bit strange, isn't he?" And he starts patrolling on a penny farthing. This is properly done in like an underground comics feel to it, like an old school indie comics feel to it. Completely bootleg as well. There's no licensing available for this one. And him patrolling on a penny farthing and doing shit like that becomes the talk of the underworld. And he's then sacked by Gotham PD as his tactics have become outdated and useless, they say. And meanwhile, there's a little bunch of villains who are straight out of a Batman comic, or maybe a Dick Tracy comic or something like that. One called The Neck, one called Fruity Limes, and one called Boxhead. And crime is rampant, and everyone's unable to cope. And illegal Batman is missing, and he's sort of sitting at the bottom of a big tunnel that he's built. And what will happen next? Will illegal Batman return? What is actually in his cave that's sending him crazy? And why is an old railway ticket a clue? And it's just off the rails, silly. But you can tell that they love Batman as well. And it is as nuts as you think it's going to be. And I've always been a fan of these sort of satires of stuff. I think we have to be able to take the piss out of stuff to be able to enjoy the original material sometimes. Perhaps some PR executives from Warner Brothers would be well to remember that, I think, maybe. But it just totally works. It is part of a series. If you look at Ed's Instagram, Ed's older than me and he's on Instagram. Look at us cool kids. He's working on the 3rd issue at the moment. I met Ed at the Satanist and Chris at the Satanist thing last weekend. I got it off them. It's lovely to meet them. You can find him at The Sound Projector on Instagram, or you can find his website, thesoundprojector.com. He also does this magazine called The Sound Projector, which is about, and he has a radio show on Resonance FM as well, which is, I think, about more found music and stuff like that. And if you go to his Instagram, you can see the works in progress from the 3rd issue. But illegal Batman, I'm glad people are out there doing stuff like this. Nobody's ever going to pay the mortgage with it, but it's just fun. I think we need to take the piss out of our icons occasionally. As is evidenced by Rob. But there you go. That's my first one.
Nice. Before Dan, you jump into yours, I'll go first with my first one, because I think we're gonna jump on yours a little bit.
We're going in on this one, are we?
Yeah.
But first, I'm gonna pick out a tale that was one of another number one. This one from Dark Horse Comics. Script by Cullen Bunn, art by Brian Hurtt, colours by Bill Crabtree, letter by Jim Campbell. This is Midnite Show number 1. Now, obviously, if you recognise some of those critters, they are the minds behind The Sixth Gun and Man of Black. Sixth Gun's such an amazing series. I haven't read Man of Black, actually. I think I need to check that out. The story of this one: Basil Saxon is a legend among horror fans. Over 50 years ago, he vanished during a freak accident on the set of the film that would have been his masterpiece. The cursed film God of Monsters was never completed and has never been seen. But when a film festival shows footage from the long-lost movie, classic horror monsters manifest to wreak havoc and terror on the unsuspecting populace. And this, I like that sort of concept anyway. And so I was brought in by the creators and the concept. But this is so much fun, this book. This is right up my alley. I from panel 1, page 1, I was in. Absolutely in. It starts off with a scene. I love like early Hammer horror, those sort of films, as well as the Universal monsters, the older sort of classic ones. This is almost a melding of the two with a little bit of Monster Squad. It's almost like a grown-up Monster Squad is what's happening with this book. But it starts off with scenes of like a film being shot. But as it's comics, you are within. You get the sense that you're watching a film. You're watching one of those early sort of vampire. It's a scene that could quite easily be out of one of the early Hammer horror Draculas. Before it cuts away and you realise you're on a film set as things are starting to go wrong. And you from there you flash forward to this town that's having this film festival, and you're being introduced to some characters who are no doubt going to be the survivors / victims for what's going on. And as the film is being shown, then these classic monsters from horror lore, and it doesn't sugarcoat it. You've got like the creature from the Gillman from the Creature of Black Lagoon. You've got a werewolf. You've got Dracula himself. You've got a mummy. It's the complete. It's the list of giants from monster movies. There's even a Frankenstein's monster, though he calls himself Frankenstein, which I thought was quite interesting. And one thing I loved about this is as those monsters are being introduced, people are watching these films on the screen, and the pacing. I read this twice because I read it panel by panel. It had the comicsology reading thing, and which worked really well for this. I then read it again just to see the whole pages because I just love the artwork. But they do a great thing of like you see a classic scene from one of the classic like monster movies of when they're discovering a mummy. And at the same time, they cut to modern day, a bunch of kids complaining about old movies, and then all of a sudden, the mummy appears there, and they have, bad things happen. The way those monsters were introduced, I just got such a kick out of it. It's proper old school fun popcorn horror. I imagine like a bombastic soundtrack to it, the right amount.
What is this, an ongoing or?
I think it feels like it's going to be a mini-series.
Right, okay.
But Cullen Bunn, as we know, he can quite easily do ongoing miniseries. And there's something about the fact that Basil Saxon on the first page, like it shows straight away, like this was a sort of like he was a Lon Chaney sort of writer, director, creator. He did all the classic movies before he just disappeared from the face of the earth. So there's a mystery that's going on there as well. So if you like that sort of classic, I mean, people always say, don't they? I used to watch the movies late at night. I'd stay up after my parents went to bed and I'd watch them. Yeah. It's that kind. It's got that kind of vibe to it and energy to it. For me, and I don't think I've said this before, but it is something. I think Brian Hurtt, who is the artist on this, and of course did the Sixth Gun. I think he's kind of like an undersung sort of. Just the quality of his work. He's one of the better. For me, he's one of the better artists out there at the moment. Right. He's just the stuff he's doing has such energy to it, and character. Wonderful character design. The action's always clear. You know where you're going, but there's also a sense of tension. Wonderful character acting. There is. I thought you, Tony, when I read this, because at this film festival, while lots of people are in the screening, there's an actress out in the hallway. She's basically got a little convention table. Do you know what I mean? She's just got some Polaroids.
Like Carolyn Monroe.
It's a totally almost like a Carolyn Monroe character. You see all these shots of like classic movies, but now she looks a little older. She's got like a grey streak. She still looks like a cool comic book character, if you know what I mean.
Probably would still. Yeah.
Her grey streak is more like a sort of rogue grey streak, if you know what I mean, rather than. And she's just got a load of attitude. And so immediately she's one of the characters in there. But I thought, oh, that's quite cool that you've got like someone who was actually in the movies as well. And it's
they've just finished kickstarting a deluxe omnibus for the Sixth Gun, haven't they?
Really?
Nice.
I know. I've got a couple of their omnibuses.
It made £173,000. Fucking hell!
It's just the Sixth Gun was that's a great supernatural western,
and they're only trying for £8,000.
When people talk about supernatural western books, the Sixth Gun has always got to be one of your tops.
Yeah.
It was done so well, and this is very much. You can tell it's the creators going, "Oh, we loved those movies. Let's just do a." You know, it's also got that sort of when we talk about the 1980s movies, always set in a small town. You know, I'll say the Monster Squad again. If you like the Monster Squad, imagine the Monster Squad, but they're not the Goonies. They're like adults that have to deal with this, and they're actually genuine, real monsters. It's brilliant. This is the book that I thought it's a great cover, but this is the one that I had so much enjoyment. And there's so much beauty going on in the book that I thought maybe the cover could have been punchier. It might be the actual sort of the writing for the book itself, the Midnite show, that makes me think people might gloss over this. People might discover it later. You know, it's not one of those ones that will immediately jump from the stands. It's Dracula sort of in a cinema, in a cinema screen, and he's clearly opening up some sort of old film case, and the audience that's behind him, they're all like zombified sort of corpses. They're all dead corpses just watching. It's a striking image, but if you look at it, you'll see what I mean. That maybe it doesn't have that jump, that real pop that it should have. But yeah, highest recommendation. This is a book that it's given me everything I want, especially at this time of year, this spooky season. So well put together. A real just came out left field. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, but the Midnite Show by Dark Horse Comics. If you like classic monster movies and monster tales, get it. That's my recommendation. Got a bit excited then.
Nice.
But Dan, another thing to get excited about is what Dan's going to talk about.
Mine's only going to be a brief one because I haven't actually finished reading this yet. I only started reading it today. And that's The United Going Underground by our friend Johnny Cannon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you guys got this?
Yeah. I like this very much so. Yeah.
Nice little bloody hardback on this one. Yes, more fun from the... it's kind of like a forward jump in time, isn't it? There's the characters are kind of moved on a little, but still doing their own thing. And they're investigating an event, which I don't know what that's about yet because I'm not far enough into the story. But one of the things Johnny I noticed him do in our little Slack group in the art channel, he picks out layouts and covers which kind of like are quite striking and innovative of like the design and where they incorporate panels into kind of the architecture of the page or in whatever's happening in the panel that's kind of worked into it. And that kind of observations and learning goes into some of these pages. And it's really nice to see. There's one where there's two characters, a father and son, and they're leaping on rooftops and going on chimney stacks. And the chimney stacks are used as panels. And it's really nicely done. I'm really, really impressed with that kind of stuff so far. I really like that kind of inventive use of panels like that and alternative antenna stories. And I'm looking for. I'm gonna have to give the full read up of it next week because
he's got such an energy to his work, hasn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he studies the greats, doesn't he?
Yeah, it shows definitely. I think there's a lot kind of.
You got to do it, man.
Yeah, go to see the masters of the craft and see how they do it, and you're like, yeah, you can learn a lot. So yeah, more than that next week.
Cool.
Nice. What about your other one, Dan, that you were going to mention?
You're talking about the robots in disguise.
Yeah. Robots in disguise. What's that about?
Transformers.
GoBots.
GoBots number one.
GoBots. You have to get some hot artists to reboot the GoBots. No, we're talking about Transformers number one from the new Energon universe.
Mm-hmm.
And it carries on directly from Void Rivals number one. where it's seemingly the arc. You don't know too much about the Transformers, am I right, T?
Yeah, I don't. I did really enjoy this, but there was quite a few characters in it who I didn't really know who they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you kind of know the Transformers, you kind of this is a lot of the kind of the G1 classics.
Yeah.
You got Optimus, Soundwave, Starscream. Is it Ratchet?
I mean, to be honest,
Ratchet's in this.
Yeah, a series like this, to be honest, especially at this day and age, especially in comics, I think Transformers, they're playing music for a certain audience.
Yes.
I mean, there's, obviously, Tony, you're brought on board by.
I got it because it's Daniel Warren Johnson.
Yeah,
he's great in it as well.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I can figure out what's going on. There's just a couple of
I think that's the important thing. You know exactly what's going on, and I think that's the beauty.
It's
of this
for
story,
old and new readers alike. If you're not kind of up on it, like in the Void Rivals, there's one of the characters, Jetfire, who's like been asleep for 1,000 odd years.
Yeah,
and he's oh fuck me, like I've been going into it again, and he shoots off in this. He comes back and like in the old animated series where they have a big fight on the Ark and it crashes into Earth and Teletran 1 basically rebuilds them. Jetfire is part of that. He's helping them rebuild themselves so they can blend in with the world. But he's kind of doesn't realize what's happened and where there's been some kind of the energy crisis on Cybertron, their homeworld. A civil war's erupted with the Decepticon on Autobots, and he's completely. What are you talking about? He doesn't understand that everything's gone so bloody radical so quickly. And there's real kind of bloodletting in the first issue, isn't there? It's like, oh, that character's not going to come back then. They just had their head blown off. And it's...
I like the use of the humans in it, I have to say.
Yes.
So it does, when it started, it focuses in on a couple of kids. One of them's got a bit of a sort of drunky kind of dad and stuff like that, and I've got sort of implicit trust for Daniel, and I was thinking they're not going to pull that thing where it's all about the humans, then the Transformers turn up on the last page, because that would be that's a seeming a trend.
Yeah, you can't do that, can you?
Not for a Transformers. So I had trusted in it wasn't going to happen, and then of course by the time you hit page 6, they're on the ship.
But he still nicely pushes so much work because
you get a lovely character view of them both.
Because classic Transformers stories are usually, I mean, people always forget about it, but there's always the human element. If they come to Earth, there's always they hang around with humans. It's not like they're all doing their own thing all the time.
But he uses shortcuts in relation to that. So what he does is he parlays to us who these characters are in the first few pages, and we get that. And there's this one moment when I was reading it, because it's all fucking kicking off on the bridge of this ship, and there's robots fighting robots. I don't really know who's who. And then just out of the blue, suddenly the kids push his gun to him. And I thought, I really loved that moment, because there's no need, because a lot of more boring comics writers would have, led up to that with a page of flipping dialogue and stuff. But you don't need it, do you? You just need to, these kids know what they've got to do, and they push the gun to him. And
they sort of look at each other and realise that these are the good guys. We've got to help these out.
Yeah.
And there's also the sense of scale. When we say they push the gun, because it's Optimus Prime who needs a bit of help. And when they push a gun, this is two people looking like they're pushing a car.
Yeah. But I loved that moment. I thought that was really good. And it just, the lines are drawn there, and then you get this sort of really interesting escape chase thing go on. I think it works. Yeah,
but
totally
Optimus
works.
gives an absolute, like, the kids. He doesn't know who they are. He doesn't know where he is in the universe, but he's just like, they're my main priority. I can't let these people die. Yeah. And he sort of risks to save them.
The other thing I thought about it is because I can only imagine as a non-artist how difficult Transformers are to draw.
Oh, yeah.
They've got to be a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about this being a strange choice of his. He clearly is a fan of them because he's got this sort of kinetic style, hasn't he?
Yeah.
But he it's so well contained here. It has the action and it has the movement, but he also he's actually totally on form for each body type, for each robot type. I think this is really well done.
Yeah.
I agree.
The space mullet days. The space mullet days have like stood him well, because obviously years and years of spaceships and doing all kinds of speed lines, and science fiction creation. He was already having training for this book. One thing I will also say, he clearly loves doing this, and it's a Daniel Warren Johnson book. So there's 2 pages of wrestling, baby. If you want fucking Optimus Prime,
suplexes on,
and then doing a back-to-back suplex.
Yes, yeah.
With the suplex, I was like, holy fucking shit.
Yeah.
Amazing. Loved it. Yeah. As well
I
as
have to
having
admit to
Go on.
I have to admit to falling asleep in the cinema during numerous Transformers movies with my son though.
Oh, that's no problem.
Oh, no,
Those movies
I
are
haven't watched
crap.
them since the first. Although the OG is the animated movie.
Yeah. I got the album of that. I got the vinyl of that.
Man, that
Yeah.
slaps.
Yeah, brilliant. But another thing, there's obviously all this action, but it's a Daniel Warren Johnson book, and as we always say with him, amazing action, kinetic, just a thrill a minute, and he gets a lot of heart and emotion into his book. There's a lot
of story in this as well.
A hell of a lot of story that's not always spoken, is it? It's just from like little flashback, little moments, the tears in the corner of someone's eyes.
I said I was really worried at the start for, oh god, are we going to end this on the comic with them turning up on the Ark and seeing all the Transformers laying around? But nope.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, man.
Yeah.
I was thinking, we're going to get them in the last page, but we don't. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
And the last panel is one of those. Oh, it's a bit hardcore. It's a villain doing something.
Oh yeah, man, that
awful. Awful.
Yeah, I don't think the Transformers have been told in story where they've gone that far before, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
So it's just a fantastic debut. It delivered on everything we hoped. Wouldn't it?
But also in the back, did you see? There's like a new G.I. Joe series with Larry Hama.
Yes,
have
you
seen
it's
good, isn't it?
Yeah, Chris Mooneyham. Have you seen Chris Mooneyham's art before?
No.
He's a really good artist. He's
good.
Yeah,
nice.
And
is
also,
that the Duke and Cobra Commander ones that are there as well?
Yeah, Duke is Joshua Williamson, Tom Riley, and Geordie Belair, and Cobra Commander is Joshua Williamson, Andrea Milana, and Annalisa Leone. Now, Duke comes out December the 27th. Cobra Commander is January 16th, and then after that, I think. Oh no, it's G.I. Joe's first.
November. Isn't it?
Oh yeah, 15th.
Yeah, so around November the 15th, if you hear a loud explosion, it's because Dan's just spontaneously exploded. Yeah, Dan's pants.
Go Joe!
Oh.
The famous catchphrase.
Oh right. Okay.
Is that what you shout at the end? Oh right.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Pump my fist in the air triumphantly as my other thing pumps.
Get Kane along.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, in a real sort of turn up for the books, this Energon universe and the G.I. Joe,
we're loving it, aren't we?
It's something we're really excited
It's like
about.
Big Game. It's another one of those sort of new comic book day fucking definite.
When's Big Game out? Is it Wednesday?
We've got 2 weeks, haven't we? We've got 2 weeks. Or is it?
Yeah.
It can't come around soon enough.
I tell you what, it's funny when you get like these, whether it's creator-owned titles or, tie-ins. It's funny what happens with these comics when you get creators that actually care. Isn't it?
Yeah. People want to buy it and interested. That's what annoying because you got a baked-in audience.
Yeah.
How the fuck do you turn a baked-in audience off?
Yeah.
Stuff is just beyond me.
Well, just write to Marvel or DC. They'll let you know that. Yeah.
But speaking of baked in, the pie of an Awesome Comics podcast episode would not be fully baked
this is Alan Partridge. This is brilliant.
Unless it was.
Where's he going with this?
Unless the delicious crust was finished off with a Tony Esmond recommendation.
Rusty Esmond's here to help
Rusty
you.
Esmond, take it away.
Boney Desmond is here. So my final one is Here Comes Calico from Sigma Comics, 8-issue series written by H.H. Gennon, art and lettering by Javier Orabic, colours by Daniel Grimaldi, cover by Garnabiel, who's a one-word artist. Essentially, he described himself. Calico is a one-man arsenal of destruction in constant pursuit of justice for the smallest and weakest amongst us. He's basically a costume punisher for people who abuse animals. So I'm fucking bang on this, to tell you now. Having been a veggie for 40 years, I'm all over this one. This is the one, I don't know if you remember me saying I bought it off a lady at Baltimore. Bit of a hard sell, let's be honest, but it was worth it. And we had a conversation about vegetarianism, me and the lady, and I thought, okay, I'll have a bit of it. So Calico is a geezer who grew up in San Francisco. Geezer, for the American people listening, just means dude, doesn't mean old person. And he really doesn't like bullies. So he took up boxing. His costume is a little bit of a cross between maybe Batman and maybe a little bit like an armoured Black Panther kind of thing going on.
Nice.
And he's got one of those sort of tech orbs a la Mr. Terrific that follows him around called Bumble. and he uses it for surveillance and stuff. The first issue, he is hunting the Gimbal family, who went on a safari in Africa and shot a lioness. And there's photos of them with the body. So Bimble does a bit of surveillance while he's in the bushes with his binoculars, and you can see through the window. There's a picture of them, the family, with this lioness that's laying there on the floor. And he says, these people are pure shit that needs to be smeared all over the street. So I'm enjoying this. It genuinely is like a really good Avatar comic, but coloured, I think, with colours. Most Avatar was black and white, I'm right in saying. It's been a few years, but most of it was black and white. But this is, and it's done on newsprint as well. So you've got that sort of, the colours sunk into the page, like we used to love, So he goes to the house, breaks in, and he says, and there's also pictures of them they've obviously gone to some posh hunting club, where they're being celebrated for having killed all these wild animals, and they're sitting at the table and eating ostrich steak when he goes to their house. And he says micro penises and dried up vaginas congregate to share their brave hunting stories, the shitbags. So you can see this is quite edgy. The dialogue.
Yeah, good. Yeah. He don't fuck about, does he?
Yeah. So he arrives with a box. He gets a box. A box is delivered to the house, and then they sign for it and turn around, and they're standing there. And he gets them to open the box, and in the box is the head of their daughter, who is beheaded. And then he basically sort of viciously tortures them to death for most of the rest of the issue. Good, solid storytelling, though. Reminds me of, like I say, those glory days of Avatar comics. So surprisingly violent and graphic. And in issue 2, surprisingly sexual. There's a page turn that I sent you guys, didn't I? There's just literally he arrives at this this place, this truck stop, and next thing you know, he's getting blown on as you do the page, and it's a full page.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I was like, oh, okay. There's absolutely no ambiguity here.
Yeah, he's always got like a shocked look on his face, like, what happened there? How did that happen? Yeah,
did not see this happening.
Shocked as the reader. Oh.
Yeah. Issue 2 deals with a man who enjoys clubbing seals whilst wearing, I think it's a Red Sox hat. And I have to say, the art in the second issue, by the same creative team, but they've kind of upped the detail a bit, actually. There's a Jose Rip style, especially in backgrounds and stuff going on in this. I think the colour works really well on it. And I was reading it in Cafe Nero earlier, and I turned the page to the blowjob scene, and I had to do that sort of subtle look to see if the people sitting behind me had seen what I was looking at.
Did anyone clock that?
Yeah. But I really enjoyed this. I reached out to them on Instagram and said, is there any way you can get these? Because I only bought the first 2 issues. I think they're up to issue 7 at the moment. Is there any way you can get it in the UK? And they said, well, it is in Diamond. You can order it through Diamond. And I said, well, I've missed a few issues now to order it through Diamond. Have you got a trade coming out? And they said, we've got a trade coming out in the first quarter of next year, 2024. So it's well worth getting. It's going to be an 8-issue trade. It's pretty good.
Ah, that sounds good. Okay.
I like it. If you go to Sigma, SIGMA, sigmacomics.com, you can find details of it there. I think they've got a YouTube channel and all sorts of things. And you can go to Instagram, Sigma_comics, and get it there. If you're into superheroes fighting a good fight against people who abuse animals, this is the one for you, I'd say.
That's the one for me.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice.
My second one, guys. There you go.
And plenty of comics for you lovely people to go out and check out and read, whether it be horror, robots in disguise, blowjobs, whatever you want, to read. There's something.
You're a fan of blowjobs.
Other jobs are available. And certainly... What the hell was that? What am I doing? What is that?
I don't know, man.
Like you say, Dan, once we get past 9 o'clock, all bets are off, aren't they? Yeah. So while we calm down, we just want to say thank you very much for listening this week. Join us next week. We've got a named guest in the pipeline that if you like horror comics, you might be a little bit interested in.
Go-to name for horror comics, I'd hazard a guess and say.
Yes.
Yeah.
So look forward to that. But in the meantime, if there's anything you want us to discuss or shout out on the show, or certainly if you've got a horror comic that you want us to check out, there's several different ways you can get in touch with us. You can email us, awesomecomicspod@gmail.com. Follow us on social media @theawesomepod. We have a Slack group, community, channel, whatever you call it. All I know is there's a wonderful group of people on there talking about comics, covers. If you want to keep this conversation going that we've had, there's a podcast channel, podcast discussion channel there, which I always like
good
checking
stuff
out.
on there. Yeah.
Wonderful group of people. So please join. Just get in touch with us, and we can add you onto there. And it's a growing community all the time. And as the guy said earlier, there's also art threads and stuff on there. So if you just want to look at some cool art, it's the place to be. Thank you for listening to us, whether it's on the website awesomecomics.podbean.com. If you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe, leave a nice review. Helps get the word out about the show and everything we talk about on a weekly basis. And if you listen to us on any other networks, such as Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, Podnode, Podknife, what other networks are we on, Tony?
We're on the Pod Network. Dear Spotify, please stop recommending Coldplay to me.
What else have you got in?
Yeah.
No, this is an ad.
Well, I always I look at playlists that are usually called folk and acoustic, and it always seems to throw a fucking Coldplay song at me in the middle of it.
You might be able to block a band. I think there is something you can
block
stop.
Coldplay.
You can stop.
I'd feel dirty for doing that.
Why?
Yeah.
But
blocking Coldplay.
You have literally just said stop recommending them to me.
Well, I'm appealing to them through the podcast medium.
Yeah. Well, guys, when you listen to this, just
thanks, Spotify.
Block Coldplay.
Yeah. Where can people find us online, etc.? Tony.
Neverownanything.com.
Nice. Dan.
You can read Vanguard at vanguardcomic.com.
Nice. And you can find me on social media at Jester Diablo. Thank you very much for listening, as always, folks. Hope you're enjoying this spooky month. We're certainly having fun. So join us next week for more comic chat and nonsense as we're rolling ever closer to 450 and beyond, which is a scary thought. That's something horrific, isn't it?
Wow.
Thinking about the amount
On the
of
road to 500 even.
Man, we're getting 450, then the 500. That's going to be massive.
I'm going to get in a load of drugs for that.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's going to be more than massive. It's going to be mega.
It's going to be filthy.
Is mega bigger than massive? I think it is.
I
think it is.
It is when you're booking a stripper. That's all I'll say.
Have a mega stripper, please. Yeah, sure.
Another bananagram, sir. Yes, please.
Oh, God.
I guess you say can have a massive stripper, like.
While we go forth and I try to wrangle whatever the plans for 500 are going to be. Join us next week, wherever you are.
The three of us and a load of strippers. It's done. I think that's written in stone now. It's fine.
Nothing's written in stone. Everything's digital this day. Tony. Or are you still old school? Are you still writing on stone?
Yeah, I'm still doing my comics. That's why it takes me so long. Sitting in the garden with a chisel. Hercules gets a blowjob. Takes ages to fucking write that.
Oh God, I spelt that wrong. Anyway, I need more slate. While we're off to B&Q to sort out Tony, have a brilliant week wherever you are in the world. We hope you're happy, healthy, doing great, enjoying some horror comics and some spooky movies in this time of year. Because it's not Christmas yet. We should enjoy Halloween first. I will stick to that. And until then, well, wherever you are in the world, just read comics, make comics, enjoy your comics, and what else should they do, guys?
Stay awesome.
Stay awesome.
See ya.
See you later.